Hey, good afternoon, everybody.
Yep, microphones are hot.
Oh,
Can you hear me?
pretty good.
We can hear you, but it's a little low.
How about now? A little louder?
Hey, good afternoon. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, no problem, Alfred.
Afternoon, Alfred.
Good afternoon.
I think you're actually okay. We need to fix that clock. It's 101. It is. We gotta push that thing up a minute.
Call to order the joint Board of Directors meeting, Engineering and Operations Committee and Budget and Finance Committee special meeting for Rainbow Municipal Water District. Call to order. Roll call, please.
President Hamilton,
Here.
Vice President Johnson,
Here.
Director Mack,
Here.
Director Townsend Smith,
Here.
Director Dale.
Here.
Members Hensley. Doctors absent. Member Nelson,
Here.
Member Stewart,
Here.
Member Marnett,
Here.
Member Marqueson,
Here.
Member Gasca.
Here?
Thank you, we have quorum.
Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America.
to the
Republic for which it stands,
one nation,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice.
and justice for all.
Do I have a motion for approval of the agenda?
Also move.
I'll second.
Moved by Director Mack, seconded by Director
Johnson.
Johnson. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Public comment. Any person who may address the board at this time on any subject not identified on this agenda, but within the jurisdiction of the Rainbow Municipal Water District. However, any matter that requires action will be referred to staff for report and action at a subsequent board meeting. As to matters on the agenda, an opportunity will be given to address the board when the matter is considered. Members of the public may make comments in person by submitting a speaker slip. I have one. Virtually through virtual or teleconference options, or by submitting an email to the secretary no less than 1 hour prior to the posted start time of the meeting. Comments should be made in an orderly manner, and profanity, slander, or abusive language which is disruptive to the meeting will not be tolerated. Individuals have a limit of 3 minutes to make comments and will have an opportunity when called upon by the presiding officer. Alec Jolly.
You're here. So I'm here because I wanted to present something called primary magmatic water to the board today. And it's highly relevant to your water district in particular because you have a particular geology that could be beneficial for this type of water. So as San Diego has quite a lot of small farms, and we have some of the most small farms and varied microclimates compared to the rest of the country. And just to go into what magmatic and primary water is, it's a type of water that can be drilled for through the crust in volcanic or geologically active areas of the world. In particular, you might have heard of some several gentlemen by the name of Stefan Rice and Paul Power. They are people, Stefan Rice in particular was a Bavarian hydrogeologist that came to America and started drilling for this type of water when he was 25 in the state of California. And he has a number of wells that are still operational in Ventura, Santa Barbara, and all up and down the state of California. But he has also done drilling in other geologically active areas in the world, like in Kenya, Tanzania, and the East African Rift Zone. And he has a proven track record. He's not alive anymore, but his successor, Paul Power, has recently passed away as well, but he also did drilling as well for this type of water. And their institute is online at called the Primary Water Institute, and you can find it online. Sorry. And then just in particular for Rainbow, you guys have so the geology that they recommend. So I'll take a step back. So for looking for magmatic water and primary water, scientists know that the mantle produces water. They're just discovering that there's a surface level hydrological cycle where, water evaporates, turns into clouds, and then it rains, on land. And so that's one cycle. But another cycle that people are starting to look into is, and scientists especially are looking into, is the deep water cycle from the mantle. And in particular, they're looking at how water is being produced in the mantle between the core and the inner mantle, and then rising up in certain geologically active areas where the crust is weak. And so as the subduction, like if you're in a certain subduction zone, like here in Southern California, where the Pacific plate's going underneath the North American plate, the mantle gets scrunched up as it's going underneath, and then it comes up in certain areas, up and down the state of California. And so that's where you're getting all these fault lines, the Palomar fault line and Elsinore fault line and many other fault lines. And so the mantle, when it's coming up close to the crust, it's bringing up this water with it in the form of certain types of rocks carry the water in them, and they get pressurized inside the mantle. Oxygen and hydrogen gas get pressurized in there, and then they come up in these weak areas. And so your geology here in Rainbow is good for that, actually. You have volcanic rock, and then you have fissure points in certain areas of your district, actually. And in light of the fact that you guys are potentially leaving the San Diego Water Authority, and water rates are pretty darn high as they are already, this would be beneficial for your water portfolio in general, I feel like. And I just hope it's just some information, just some food for thought, and taking into consideration maybe later or whenever you want. But I think it would be highly interesting to see if you guys could find something like this around here. And then honestly, the rest of the San Diego County area could benefit from drilling for this type of water. Let me see what else is there. You can find this type of water using resonant acoustic profiling, scintillation counters or radiometric surveys, and I can't pronounce that, magnetometry. I'm probably mispronouncing that. It's basically using electromagnetic fields to detect anomalies in fracture zones using aerial radar and ground electromagnetic fields. So this is just, and this is related to volcanism and springs and stuff like that. So this is just a quick introduction, I guess, for the topic. I can come back to speak about it at your next board meeting. I just found out about your board meeting today, so I didn't have much time to prepare, but I have a PowerPoint and a piece of paper here that you guys can look at if you're interested. And honestly, I just want to submit it for the public record anyway, so thank you.
Thank you.
Have you spoken to other districts about this?
No, you guys are the first, because you have the best geology, except for maybe like parts of East. Sorry. So you guys are the best ones right now because you have the most recent volcanic rock. Like you guys have the youngest volcanic rock in your guys' district, and then you have a fracture area where you could drill off the side to it or in the area there. I also have recommendations in my PowerPoint for different drilling experts. So Paul Power, Stephen Rice, the Primary Water Institute, and then there's another consortium of drillers as well that have testimonies about how they've drilled for this water and there's been successful. And so I'm going to go to the San Diego County Water Authority, present there, and see what they think. But you guys have the best geology so far. And again, in the light of the fact that you guys are separating from San Diego Water Authority, I think you guys could use any source of water that you could get your hands on. So
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no other public speaker comments. Thank you. We'll move on. Presentation of draft capital improvement plan.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for coming. Really wanted to get everybody together. We've been talking about this for a little bit, but really a series of 3 workshops. Today being the first, we wanted to get the board and the committee really outside of a kind of our normal board meeting, just because these are focus areas. I think we've got to make some pretty big decisions in the next few months. And so today we're going to focus on the CIP, the draft CIP, which Chad and his team have done a great job putting together a real comprehensive look at kind of our known needs here at the district. And we've put a kind of a draft timeline to it. I'll say this, that it'll probably change even before we get to June. I'm sure of it. But we kind of took a first look at it, and as we go through, and obviously Rick's got a lot of number crunching to do and things of that nature. But really wanted to get everybody in here early to start taking a look at it, get your feedback, and it's really kind of building blocks, right? We're going to do the CIP first. We'll move on next month. April 9th was just a few weeks away, and we'll kind of talk about some of the core financials, right? Where we sit today, reserves and, current debt service and, kind of everything that makes up our budget, and kind of reset some of these targets, right? Make sure we're going towards what are the reserve targets we want to hit, minimums, maximum, where do we sit now? And really all that's going to feed into the meeting in May, which would be then obviously setting rates and fees and charges to fund all those things. Now we're looking at today we're going to look at a 5-year and also a 10-year look at the CIP. Obviously, once you go past 6-7 years, it gets a little less clear, right? But there are things in there we know we need to do. Some of them are pretty large, and so we want to make sure we had the best picture available to see those things. So that's why we took it out 10 years. So you'll see those 2 things today, and ultimately we'll really, when we get to approval of the budget, we'll only be asking for the first year, right? We're asking for the first year approval of the CIP. So eventually that we'll be honing in on that, right? What we can do the first year, kind of the obligations we have. We do have some obligations, and so that's kind of where we'll end up. But again, for kind of this long-term financial planning and how do we want to utilize debt? When do we want to utilize debt? I mean, we want to kind of move through those things to really get a good plan moving forward to ensure the success of the district, right? That's really the ultimate goal. And we've got definitely some opportunities. We're gonna complete detachment, at some point this year, but we've got some challenges too. There is some obligations that come along with that. Exit fee payment, and there's projects that have to be done and things that have to be done that are related to that. On top of that, and we've talked a little bit about this, everybody's looking at January rate increases right now, and the picture is not rosy in Southern California, probably even beyond. But everybody here is struggling with really the same key issue, which is reduced demand and a lot of fixed cost, right? High fixed cost and your variable revenue being reduced, and that's at Met. It's a large problem at Met right now. It's just as big at the County Water Authority. So, each of them are contemplating, I think, double-digit type rate increases. There are a lot of proposals out there to do some different things, and so we're weighing in on those that we think are the best. Met has a couple of interesting proposals to help get the volumetric rates down. But we'll really have a good handle on that too. I think Met's planning on taking up their budget adoption. They do a 2-year budget adoption. April 9th is their plan. So through, actually starting next month, we should have a much better handle on kind of everything that's in front of us. And then that allows us to really kind of take that hard look at what we need to do, again, to meet the needs of the district and, everything that we need to do. So that's really where we sit today. I'm going to take you through just the first few slides, and then I'm going to hand it over to Chad to go through a lot of the
Details.
the gory details. Yeah, the gory details, the projects and such. So if you want to go to the next slide.
I gotcha.
So this is just really an overview, year by year of the 5-year CIP, total of about 64 million, 64 million, about 2/3 of that in the water capital. So about 41 million in water capital. And you can see those first few years are heavier in water. The green there is the wastewater. We get about 22 million, and that's mostly tied up in a couple of larger projects on the wastewater side, and we'll get into that. But that's kind of the 5-year overview. It looks, average out about 8 million a year in CIP. So that's the first, the 5 years. And so next slide, yeah, the drivers really, and we kind of categorize these into a few kind of bulk categories, but you can see, and probably not surprising, a good portion of the water is rehab and replacement. So you've got pipelines and pump stations and valves and things that need to be replaced. And so that's obviously a large driver, almost, getting near half, 44% of our the driver there. Source of supply, that's really anything to do with kind of where we're getting our water from. So obviously completing the pump station so that we can get water from the north. We've got some connections to Fallbrook and some other things that we want to do that kind of assist with all of that. A lot of the requirements from the settlement agreement with San Diego County Water Authority are wrapped up into that category there. And then the other is improvements and upgrades, which is, we've got some pump stations, a lot of electrical stuff that needs to be upgraded. It's just equipment that's obsolete, right? We're having trouble finding parts. It's, stuff from the 70s and 80s and so needs upgrading. So that's another kind of large portion of that. And then on planning, really, that's just one project. That's the master plan, and I'll let Chad kind of go through that. But that's something we're proposing for year one. So the next slide, this is just by asset type. So again, kind of moving around the gamut, reservoirs and pump stations. And you can kind of see the largest, again, being our underground infrastructure, our pipelines. That's the largest driver of the CIP. We've got, quite a few areas that need upgrades and replacements. And, we have an aging system. So that's really not a surprise either. We do have the headquarters on here, and I'll get into that once we get to that slide, just to kind of at least give you the overview of the assumptions we made going in. I think we've got some work to do on planning and, direction wise where we're headed with that. But we wanted to make some assumptions so we can plan for the future to make sure, regardless of where we end up, we've got kind of a plan to get things done. So moving on to the sewer side, again, this is really driven by just a couple large projects. We have a sewer that's undersized out on North River Road. That's been a kind of a constant problem with staff. We've got kind of a temporary fix. We've got some ability to operate. We'll have some ability to operate over at Thoroughbred, but ultimately, the flows aren't going to go down over there. And so ultimately we need to do that. So we've got it a couple of years out, but that's driving a lot of it. And then lift station, that's actually a developer driven project. So that's one of our large ones, really focused on over at Ocean Breeze. And, once that those developments come in, there is a requirement for a lift station over there. So obviously we'll be looking at some capacity fees in that to fund some of those projects. But again, want to get them into the capital improvement plan, put a number to them so we can plan accordingly. And then we've got some generators on that side too that need replacing. We have some 89 vintage generators that need replacement. Again, difficult things to repair and that kind of thing. So again, by driver, and this one doesn't change as much as the water, but again, talking about additional capacity from new development. We have some current capacity limitations, and so that's driving a lot of our current projects. And then rehab and replacement. Those are really just the generators and then some linings. If we're going to line existing sewers just to extend the useful life, that's wrapped up in that category there. So just a summary of the projects. We've got 52 total projects in water and 10 projects on the sewer side. You can see 12 water projects in year one and just the one project on the wastewater side in year one. Next slide. And so again, this is just, again, once you get past year 5, it's a little more difficult to predict. It's actually when and, these things will occur. But we do have a couple of large projects. There's one more project on the sewer side, an undersized pipeline that is, some additional flow comes online. It's gonna drive another project. So that's there in year 6. The floating covers that are covering our reservoirs right now. We know that in the relatively near future, they will have to be replaced. And so that is a large ticket item that we need to plan for. We're very hopeful it doesn't land in the first 5 years, but you can see we've got it year 7 or 8. Just knowing, that's a project that, it may require some debt financing or something like that. So again, wanted to get that on the books so that we can start to plan for those things. As you get out to year 9 and 10, you can see it becomes a little less certain. I imagine those bars will probably rise by the time we get there with additional pipeline replacements and things like that. Probably even by next year when we do this again, you'll probably see those things start to fill out. But anyway, so that's like the 10-year overview. You can see it's about $100 million capital program over the 10 years. So kind of makes sense, right? You got about 8 million per year in those first 5 years. It actually is probably going to get a little bigger as time goes on. Things get more expensive, and we try to escalate things, as we're looking out. Again, that gets a little bit difficult, but we try to do those things. So that's what you're looking at, 8 to 10 million a year over that 10-year horizon. I'm going to stop there. Any questions before we really get rolling into the projects? Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Chad then.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Jake, and thank you, members of the board and committee members. In the Engineering and Operations Committee, we spend a great deal of time talking about this, and oftentimes it becomes frustrating from both ends, the committee members and the ratepayers and staff, and do this. And so the committees and the board wanting to do a workshop like this, staff, as much work as it was, is very excited about this because you're all getting to hear it and see it for the first time. And by making it this 10-year, we actually went out 20 years, but there's past 10, it really didn't get very populated. But you'll see that on those spreadsheets. It was, let's not have a placeholder anymore. Let's spread it out where we think it will actually fall. And so you're getting to see all of that now. And, we've used that term, we can't afford to kick the can down the road. And this is like, we're really putting it where it is now. There is some Excel spreadsheets. We tried putting that into the PowerPoint. It was not working. No one was going to be able to see it no matter how hard we tried. So you do have those handouts on there. What you will see is the running total remains the same on the bottom of each of those. We tried to make that so you didn't have to keep flipping back to page 1, but the projects roll off. So there's no carryovers of projects. So every slide we're going to go through is explained in that spreadsheet in the fiscal year that it's called out. And as Jake mentioned, this is what we're asking for. The next couple of committees and where the board sets, this will change and shift again. I do want to preface also, in meeting with all departments, I've been here almost 5 years and then really hitting it very hard again in these last couple of months. This is not ideal to district staff or any department. If it was ideal, this would all be front loaded in your first 5 years. The fact that we're having to spread this out and meeting with the IT department, the operations department, every department, I literally made them play, would you rather? And they had to choose, and then engineering helped vet those things and put them out. So I just want everyone in that same mindset. We want this in the first 5. If Rick and Jake and the board can make that happen, amazing. We have the staff to get that done, but we're presenting what we feel is realistic. As I go through, please interrupt me. Flint already wants to interrupt. Go for it, Flint.
If you're going to cover this during the presentation, let me know, but I did not see it obviously in the PowerPoint that was sent around. I am curious what kind of scoring system or criteria and weighting, what did you guys use in order to put this together?
Great question. It's in there. It's a column not shown on the spreadsheet printed. We did not have time to fully dive into that and put that all through the model. So the ranking system is, if it's shown in an earlier fiscal year, it's a higher ranking project than one in a later year. And that's kind of that would you rather. IT is a great example. They needed electrical work done at Gomez, McGee, and the Morrow pump station. Okay. Which one has to go first? Which one is in the worst? And I think Lookout was also in there. And so we vetted that in and we put them into those corresponding fiscal years. We will plug all this into our programmatic software later. We're going to have even better charts and graphs and an actual program load with the ranking. But for this purpose, the ones that are in the front years rank higher than the ones in the outer years.
And that was actually, so Chad came to me as we were developing this, and I asked for a really high focus on project justification.
Yeah.
Right. Tell me why. Right. We've had 7 breaks. It was built in 1979. Give me some real justification. They worked really hard on that, and at some point, Chad came to me and said, "Hey, I got to put all these in the ranking thing." And I said, "Well, we can do that after the workshop. Let's get it what we think it is." And again, that's why I think some of these may shift. I don't know if the ranking software is going to make any of these. Staff knows pretty well what I think the things that need to be pushed ahead of other things, but we are going to run it through that model, and you'll see us a ranking once we get next month and before budget, for sure, before budget.
Yep. Any other questions before I go on? Okay, well, please. And for those viewing online, use the raise your hand feature or just unmute yourself if you're a panelist, but please just interrupt me if you want me to stop or expand. So the first one we have, we broke these down into categories as you go through. And I believe this, thank you to Therese for sending this out. Wasn't a lot of advance notice, but you did get it before the meeting. So the first one we have, as Jake alluded to, is the water and wastewater master plan. This was last updated in 2016. It was done in the engineering department and did not include input from the operations department. And so as Jake has come on board and Robert and I have used this as more of a paperweight than anything else over the years, it is abundantly clear that the district needs this. It is shown. We've met with a couple different consultants just to kind of, hey, we haven't done this in a really long time. What's the order of magnitude here? We feel it's going to come in right around the 1 million mark. And they said if you gave us the green light today, this is about an 18-month project. So that's why it's covered over 2 fiscal years, 500,000 each. The engineering department is working on the RFP on this, and that will go out on the street. So again, we're not going to put anything out there though until we actually have a budget for this coming fiscal year.
Yeah. And really a big key on this one is, we really have changed a lot of the way we operate. And I've talked about this a little bit at the committees and a little bit to the board, but just physically, right? We've added pressure reducing stations where we've had trouble. We have 5 more years of leak data that we really have never incorporated into kind of that original analysis that we did back in 2018. We don't have an updated hydraulic. We don't have a hydraulic model really.
No.
And we're changing how we operate the system, right? We're going to be moving water from the north over towards Morrow, up down to the south. And, I think there's a lot in there to be discovered. As opposed to just going out in the field and watch it break. And, there's a lot we can do, I think, even just on those things, but there's some really key drivers on us wanting to have a really solid planning document. We haven't updated our capacity fees in multiple years, and I think we've got some new projects in that. And so we want to incorporate all those things in, and we feel like this is kind of the key to being able to do that, is having a really good master plan document, an updated hydraulic model, which provides all kinds of benefits, especially when new projects come in. If a big development wants to come in, we can actually analyze it, right?
Yeah.
What are the needs and those kind of things. So it really gives you a lot of tools to do some really important business. And so that is it's kind of why it's the first thing on the list.
I have a question, clarification. So this water and wastewater master plan, the last plan was dated 2016.
Correct,
So 8 years ago.
correct.
Thank you.
And by the time you get it done, it'll be 10.
Yes.
It'll be 10 years old.
And how will there be any required expenditures on this in out years? I mean, we waited 8 years. Now we're gonna spend $1 million. So we wait another 8 years, we gotta spend $1 million again,
This really should be done about every 5 to 6 years.
$1 million a pop.
About, yes. This is the heavy lift. This is kind of like what engineering and the departments did to get to this workshop today. I hope my workload goes slightly down a little bit and Rick's goes up in the next couple of weeks. I don't think the next one, say we do this one now, we do another one in 5 years from now, we're better prepared, not nearly as many system changes. That number could come down. The hydraulic model, they're starting from scratch right now. They would have something really good to go off of. So that number could come down.
Yeah, it'd be more of an update potentially than a.
Well, and if you go out to bid each time, then it's going to stay high. But if you do a long-term relationship, then we're getting an update, like Jake just said, and that's a significant difference, I think, that you'd see in what the cost is.
One thing before we get too much into it, because it's going to be a difference than what you've seen before. But when you see numbers in each fiscal year, so historically, we budgeted almost on a cash basis. So you would see how much we think we're going to spend on each project each year. And that can be very confusing because you're going to get rollover amounts from prior years and all sorts of things. And frankly, once we get to construction, we need to have the full amount of funding set aside or locked in with the plan. And so what you see here is not a necessarily cash basis. Is before construction, you'll see what we think we need to spend every year, while we still have a choice to stop it, so to speak. And when you get to the year in which we begin construction, you'll see the full amount of the construction costs for the whole project, whether that takes us a few years to spend or not. So you can tell, soft cost, design costs, and then all of a sudden a large amount that's construction. All of those amounts will, so to speak, add to a cumulative budget that will roll over until the project stops. And then if there's leftover amounts, it'll sort of go back to the general fund.
That's a great point. You're going to see a slide here in a little bit on the pump stations project where it's ongoing. We have to finish it, but we need money in this coming fiscal year to do that. So what Rick just talked about would alleviate that entirely. The next slide, I thought it was coming up a little bit later, is the next slide. Again, a must have. This is the West Lilac, Rancho Amigos, and Dentro de Lomas pump stations. The board has already awarded a construction agreement with Pacific Hydrotech. So we've had 3 different progress meetings with the contractor. The areas have been scrubbed and are ready to go. Contractors getting ready to mobilize. Staff is reviewing submittals as we go. We are owner furnishing the 3 pump stations. You can see this one. This is actually the Rancho Amigos rendering. This is off of Camino del Rey and Rancho Amigos Drive. This is a 2-shed building because this one has an emergency generator, which will also be included. So that's going to be the largest one there. And again, the district is owner furnishing that because lead times were about 2.5, 3 years to get this stuff. So this is already on its way and well under fabrication. The next one, Jake, I got to give credit. He found some good pictures for us for some of these slides. There's a beautiful water authority connection. So this is the connections 1, 8, 9, and 10. This is a condition of detachment. So you can see that in year 1. This is an estimate. It could go a little down, could go a little up. We could hit it right on the bullseye. Time will tell. And I think, Jake, this actual numbers coming before the June budget, correct?
It should be, yeah. We've been expecting it for a while, and yeah, it's it's a little difficult, I think, to appraise these things because the property is actually not owned. It's on easement, and there's joint use agreements, and so I don't think there's really a value to that per se. And then you have, 50-year-old block buildings and control valve and things like that. So I think the appraisal part is taking a little bit longer than
And we're buying back what we originally paid for.
we did. I did believe we did pay to put these in, and we would be purchasing these facilities. Yes, and a couple of them, I think we're actually going to be handing them over to Metropolitan, a portion of those facilities. Yeah, so that's
So, I understand that it's a condition of detachment. Totally get that. Totally get it. So I guess, I don't know if this is a Chad question or a Robert question or a Rick question, but are these facilities are they going to provide any utility to us once we have fully detached?
these 4 facilities are our connections. They will be where we're taking our water from.
Okay, these.
Yeah, these are.
They're on the north.
They're on the north and central part of our service area, but these are will be the 4 active connections.
So whatever the amount is thank you, whatever amount we pay for it would end up showing up as an asset on the balance sheet, Rick?
Unless we transfer it to Met.
That is an excellent question, Flint, and probably one of the most gray areas of accounting. Probably is my answer.
Yeah.
Well, the reason why I'm thinking about adding assets to the balance sheet is that at some point, if we ever do want to do some debt financing, it strikes me that we need a good, strong balance sheet. And if we're going to have to pay money out the door to buy this stuff, then at least we should get some benefit from it. That's my thought.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we actually get the facilities. I mean, we are gonna yeah, but yeah, I hear you.
Hey, I got a question. So, Jake, you made the statement that some of the facilities might turn to Met, and I thought that either they would have been in the custody of Eastern or that we would retain custody for maintenance.
Well, I mean, only a portion of it. So we will be taking over the majority of the facilities, but the differences is on the first aqueduct. So connections 1 and 10, which are on the east side of the district. Those currently, the water authority owns both the meter and the flow control facility. 8 and 9, it's already set up where Met owns the meter and County Water Authority just owns the downstream flow control structure. So a little bit different on both sides. So on 1 and 10, those are the ones where we've got to acquire everything from the County Water Authority, but then Met requires, typically, they're still evaluating this. We just had a call with them last week, actually, where they're evaluating, it's going to come to Rainbow, but then, typically Met owns the meter. So we would dedicate the connection and the meter to Metropolitan. That's what I think is going to happen. Normally you'd have to build those facilities, right? If you're going to go create a new connection, you'd build those facilities and dedicate them to Met. So it's really, we're just kind of skipping it's already built. So we're acquiring and likely doing that. But actually Met was still they weren't 100% sure that that's how they wanted to do this. Although that's kind of the typical setup. They're going to evaluate it. So we'll know that in the next couple of months, but regardless, we've got to acquire these from the County Water Authority.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, the Gopher Skid Pump Station, which those who attended the banquet, this was, I believe, the Project of the Year award. This was a great out-of-the-box idea that district staff came up with. We have a temporary pump skid. A pump skid is basically a portable pump. It's, if you can just picture, it shows up on a trailer and you can park it wherever you want. It's not its actual building. Operations has created an enclosure with a building over it to keep the UV light off of it. We've ran temporary power to it. It is operational and being tested as we speak. The issue with this one is we borrowed our one and only portable pump skid to take out there. And if we need that at the location that it was originally for, we're one without it right now. So that's why this is in year one to actually procure the new pumps and motors for that location, bring permanent power, all of that good stuff. But this actually is in use.
And if you're not 100% familiar with the reasoning for the pump station, this is down in our southern service area. And while our new pump stations will move water into those tanks, right? We have 3 tanks down there. They're all at the same pressure zone, but the interconnections are small-ish diameter. And so the tanks don't always operate together, right? Like you fill in one and the other one doesn't automatically fill up. They'll do this depending on where the demand is. And so what this does is this is sitting at one of the tanks. It actually basically overcomes the head loss in the piping between the tanks. So you can actually, if you've got more water going into one tank, you can actually then take it over to the other side of the zone. And so this is good. This really, it's an insurance policy to make sure that we can move water in that zone wherever we need it during periods of high demand. That's what it is. Without the, originally this was kind of the Weiss connection idea. And that's not off the table, but that's probably more of a longer term, longer term project, I would say. And, so this is staff came up with this, so this can really move water anywhere within that zone that we need it, and it is kind of a critical piece of service in that southern area. Gives us a lot of reliability.
It's complex. Robert just made sure I was correct. This is actually adjacent to our Turner tank, but it's pumping water to the Gopher tank, which is right by the wastewater treatment plant. So they're trying to move that water where they need to get the water to go.
I have a question.
Sure.
And maybe this is a question for Robert. So with all of the changes and how the system will be operated, it just brings to mind that perhaps there might be some water quality issues with moving water the opposite way it's moved since the pipes were put in. And I know this isn't a capital question, but I'm wondering if we have a plan to address any water quality issues, which could be system-wide. I mean, it could impact customer service and flushing and all of that. Have we thought about that?
Yes, of course we did. Yeah, water quality issues. So what we did is these southern tanks are going to be fed from Morrow Reservoir. So what we've done over the last couple of years is expand the Morrow zone as far south as we could expand it. We suspect not only will we have water quality issues, but we might have some main breaks because we're pumping on lines that have never had been pumped before. As with all water quality issues, we address them on, first come, first served basis. There'll probably be some flushing involved. We're also talking about putting what we call RCS systems to improve the chlorine residual at those tanks if needed. So it's something that we're keeping in the back of our mind, but we anticipate that we're going to have some issues. From an engineering point of view, I'm going to throw Jake under the bus on this. Engineers will tell you water can go both directions in pipe. And if that pipe's rated at a certain pressure, but I don't know what I say. It's an old wise tale that if you move water in different directions, it creates issues. It's just a weird phenomenon. So there may be some issues, yes. But the good news is that southern zone is our highest demanded zone. So the pipes generally aren't sitting stale down there. We're moving a lot of water down there.
The other thing too, I'll just mention, is, historically we have moved water that way during periods of aqueduct shutdowns. So it's not that it's never moved that way, but it typically doesn't. So your point is still valid if you've got, build up in those pipes. I've experienced that before unexpectedly. Yeah.
It happens. And that's a great point Jake brings up, because every time the aqueduct shuts down, we put temporary pumps and we're moving water from north to south. So we just haven't done it in a couple of years, but we expect there's going to be some issues. We'll sort.
Okay. So this is a project that we're working with the Fallbrook Public Utilities District, FPUD, on. This is one of 6 that both agencies have identified. We're showing the first 2, so 2 of 6 in the first 5 years. The reason that those remaining 4 are out there is we want to be fully detached. We want our pump stations to be running like the Gopher one we just showed you, have these interconnects and see what's truly needed. And that's why, as Jake said, Weiss is in a later year, the remaining 4 interconnects in later years to see if we actually really do need these or not. But this is one staff is currently working with FPUD staff, and this is coming. And so as we get closer and closer, this is something where an interconnect would be brought before both boards at a later date.
Yeah.
Yes.
Does this mean that we will be buying water or will we be exchanging water with FPUD?
Buying.
These two, I believe, are really more in our direction. Yeah, water from them to us.
From them to us?
Yep.
And what will we be paying for that water relative to water that we could buy from Eastern?
We'll have to work that out.
Yes.
Well, yeah, that's something that has to be worked out.
It just seems to me that would affect, is this essential for our operation? Is this absolutely essential?
Well,
I see the word flexibility. Sometimes to me, that's code for convenient.
well, to some degree, I think the idea is, and Robert can chime in here too. We're going to be moving a lot of water through Morrow, and right now, again, coming from Eastern, as much as we can move to Morrow, then to the south, and there's other areas that actually draw from Morrow, right? The Morrow pump station, which has a very high flow rate. So when you turn that on, you got to fill that Morrow tank. That's a big draw on it, so it kind of takes away from what you can pull the other direction. And so these two connections are really meant to potentially offset. That's why it's the flexibility part, right? You can actually offset how often you're having to turn on that pump station. You can take water here instead, so you're wheeling it through FPUD, and then you maintain all of your capacity to move through Morrow in the other direction. So again, it's more of a high demand period type of situation, but it's something that I think our operations staff desires to feel comfortable that we've got kind of enough supply down there to keep things moving the way they need to move.
Couldn't it also supply us with a little bit more reliability?
I would say so. Yes, I would say so, because now you're not just reliant on that pump station or that. Yeah, it's kind of giving you another loop off of the thing. And we've talked to FPUD about these, and they're, obviously they're willing to participate in these connections, but some of the details have to be worked out. I don't know if they pump water to this zone or all those things will have to be
I guess
worked
what
out.
I'm really suggesting for this and perhaps the next one is just, have we looked, we know there's a capital cost. Have we looked at what the operating cost would be compared to getting that water some other way, like from Eastern and going through the gymnastics of moving it around and whatever?
Yeah.
Just a little ROI analysis.
Yeah. And I think when, obviously once we start operating, when we get into these agreements, these would be, we would stay on our normal source of supply unless needed, basically. So they would just be kind of an as needed supply. It'd probably be, a touch more expensive. You're using their facilities to wheel water. So
Have we done the opposite? Have we ever provided to Fallbrook water? Or is this a brand new concept?
No, so all water agencies have what we call emergency interconnects with neighboring agencies. So in the event something goes down with Oceanside and they're near VID, there's going to be an interconnect. And these are great questions. And it's kind of like, all right, well, we need to flow water from, say, FPUD into Rainbow. All right, let's work out those financials later. We're going to track, we're going to figure out how much it is. The vault, the facility, once it's constructed, it's not a thing that turns on all the time. There's not a lot of electrical. Sometimes they want SCADA ran. So the operating cost is relatively low in the scheme of other facilities that we're operating daily. But this really is we have a very good idea of what to expect, but we're not quite certain yet.
Mhm.
This is like your belts and suspenders is the way I would put it.
Thank you.
And then
Built-in suspenders, but do you need both in the first year?
We do.
Is it
Yes.
essential to operation? Cannot operate without it?
In peak demands, we are concerned that without these, yes, there's a concern, but it has not been proven yet.
So how many times in a year would we use these facilities?
So as he was talking about, we have interconnects with FPUD and we have them with other districts, right? So this could technically be considered an emergency interconnect. We don't know because we're moving water in a completely different direction. And this goes back to the water model for the entire district that Jake was talking about, the hydraulic water model. If we had a
don't
good
have it.
hydraulic water model, we could model the effects of moving 20 million gallons a day to those 3 southern tanks and where that's going to have impact. We did some light modeling earlier, say last year, and we did have a slight deficit in that Morrow zone. There's a lot of factors that go into what are you trying to achieve here? We're trying to achieve peak day demand, so the hottest day, which would be the most demands, and could we keep the tanks full in that instance? It's a very precarious situation because we could go back and say, well, if we know it's going to be hot, we'll pre-fill the tanks, right? The issue that Jake brought up earlier with the pump station, with Morrow Pump Station, is the amount of demand that's coming out of Morrow when you turn just that one pump station on, about 4,500 GPM. When we activate all 3 new pump stations together, we're probably looking at, I don't know, I want to say another 20 CFS on top of that 4,500. So you're probably 25 CFS coming out of Morrow at the same time. And we're not sure the effects that that's going to have on the system. So this is a safety for us where we can get water from FPUD to feed in and take a little bit of that weight off of Morrow. What I just found out today, last week we did a flow test. I knew about that, but what I found out today, the conversations our staff was having with FPUD, is we can actually flow water back to them if they need it.
Correct.
So now this becomes a two-way interconnect.
Yeah.
So there's a mutual benefit on this. They have a zone out there. We figured it out. If we have to feed them water, they get about a 12 PSI pressure loss. So that's manageable. So it works out in their favor as well. But there's a deficit in the Morrow zone. So basically, if you look at it this way, we're taking water from Palo Mesa, from GERD, and trying to get it into Morrow tank. This is a shortcut.
So is the answer to my question yes or no?
We think there is going to be a deficit.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Operate? Do we have to have it to operate?
I
Absolutely.
think on the peak hot days that we have, let's say we have 195-degree days, this will get turned on. Yes. So it will not be an everyday thing. No.
So we're talking about maybe summer of 25.
Yep.
Right? And the timing of the capital plans, they may not have the modeling done by then to at least take a look at it. Should we be accelerating the modeling in advance of the master plan updates, just so
well,
you can answer these questions?
Well, I mean, I think what Robert was saying, and this was my understanding too, was that they did a small scale model. So, right, you built a small scale model
To just the Morrow zone.
and under those peak conditions that we needed the several CFS of additional supply. And so that's what really these are for. So the modeling actually showed this. I guess what we're saying is we don't have a full model to, I mean, is it 100% accurate? It's the best we've got.
The
It's the best
modeler
we've got.
actually suggested we do the interconnect with FPUD up on Gracie Lane. That's what the model said would be the best location. And then we countered that and saying if we put an interconnect there, all that water flows into Palo Mesa tank. That's not going to do us any good. We need it farther west towards Morrow. So it's been validated that this connection's needed. It's just when you ask specifically how much we're going to use it, I couldn't tell you.
Yeah,
Really.
it's a peak. I mean, it's just to offset the peaks. But I think it's going to be useful. Like Robert said, it's useful even beyond that, right? Being able to move water. You can take your pump station down and move water. If you got actually the Morrow pump station rehab is actually in that 10-year CIP. So it provides some other benefits too. And I think this is going to be staff. We're going to
Correct.
construct these.
Yes.
So yeah, we'll probably do like a 60% design and then let because they're short runs of pipe. Yeah. So I think we can complete them pretty quickly. That's the good news. But
And then just one note on the financial piece to get to your question. So we haven't worked out the terms of that, but so that's the first part. But generally speaking, just to characterize it one way, the highest cost water is still going to be the same water for the both of us, which is Eastern water. So either it comes to them first and then goes around and then comes back into our system, or obviously we draw directly from the same line. So the base water cost isn't going to be any more than what we're paying for, plus probably a wheeling charge. That's what needs to be worked out for using their infrastructure. So it's the same water. It's all Eastern water, maybe groundwater that hasn't been discussed, but so it's the same water. It's still Eastern water. It's just how much we would pay for the use of their system to move the water that comes into play.
I would imagine if they have a mutual benefit from the connection too, then they wouldn't be charging us any wheeling.
Correct. That's
charges.
typical if it's
I mean,
mutual.
that's not
Yeah.
typical in these interconnection agreements. Wheeling
right.
wouldn't.
And that was my thought too. And unless they've got to pump additional water, then obviously you're going to offset those kind of costs. But
And
yeah,
to the extent that Robert got the news this morning that it was going to be a two-way exchange or two-way connection, and that FPUD potentially can benefit as well as us, can they participate in the capital cost?
I think we're driving this. I don't think this is a need for them. We can ask. We can ask, but I think we're the requesters on this. We're the ones that actually need it. The good news is if it does mutually benefit, at least, there's some leverage there to work out kind of, but for sure the water costs and things like that. And yeah, maybe the metering and some of those things we might be able to work out, but so we'll work on that.
Are they requesting any interconnections to our system?
I don't think currently they
Not
are.
yet.
No, not yet. Not yet.
Yeah, about a year ago, we decommissioned an interconnect that neither agency had used in almost 20 years. So
They're buying like less than 6,000 acre feet of water. So they're not using a lot of water these days. Yeah. Okay,
all right, here's the second of the six.
Hang on, one quick question. What's the diameter of that pipe?
they're not big, right? 6, 8.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
one of them 6. Yeah.
all right, thank you.
Here's the second. This is the exact same situation, just different cross streets. Trying to do the same thing though. The La Cañada pipeline replacement and pressure reduction. So we have in our lower yard a couple pressure reducing stations that have yet to be deployed. This is where those are going to be deployed. And staff is going to do this work via force account. This is why the number is lower. This will not be going out for competitive bidding. This is going to be done with Rainbow Cruise. Jake mentioned at the very beginning, we have 5 years worth of leak data now and break data. This area is of very high concern in the district right now. And so we feel that when we do have these breaks, like we had it in Sarayan, which is a slide coming up later, the break was catastrophic damage. We've installed pressure reducing stations there. We might still have a break, but we're not going to be damaging homes. So the same thought here, get out there, deploy the pressure reducing stations, lower that pressure that we no longer need it to be in the high 2s or even 3s, and then go out there and replace the pipeline.
Will there be a design phase for this project?
There will, and
We'll do it.
that will be subbed out to a consultant, and we'll do exactly what Jake said, get it to about 60% design and turn it over to operations. The district, in the years that I've been aware, Flint has not ever done its own in-house AutoCAD design work.
Shame.
Okay, the isolation valve installation program. So throughout the district, you see they're much smaller than a sewer manhole ring or a storm drain ring. Those are our valve cans. Most T's ideally have 3 valves. Many of ours do not have 3 valves. Many of our valves are in the either broken open or broken closed positions. Neither one is good for us. And so what happens when we do have these breaks on an area like La Cañada, the operations department, the system operators, the meters department, they go out and they say, okay, this is the area that's affected. They find the nearest valves to go to close to minimax how many customers we're going to impact. That valve is broken in either position. You have to just keep expanding those zones. So more people are affected, the shutdown duration time is longer, all of that. So this program is an ongoing program. That's why this thing is funded all the way out to both procure the valves that we need, plus staff time to do it. And again, I would like to commend the operations department. This is something that we do in-house. This is not subbed out to a third-party contractor.
Hey, Chad,
Yes.
would you say this is a safety issue with with Robert's crews doing the repairs when their valves aren't holding?
So I'll defer to Robert if I'm incorrect. I don't think it's a safety issue because if the nearest valve isn't holding, they're going to go back to another valve. So wherever the people are working are going to have that isolated protection that's necessary. It's just the amount of pipeline and customers off those pipelines that becomes affected. So if it was going to take us an hour to turn off 20 meters, now it's going to take us 4 hours to turn off 100 meters.
It just happened the other night on GERD. It was a one valve shutdown, probably put 8 homes out of water. Valve was broken open.
Yep.
So then we went all the way up to Retchie and then all the way down into the winery down off of GERD. Shut down a 16-inch line. It took us a couple hours to shut it down, drain the line, then another couple hours just to refill the line. The repair took about an hour.
Yes. Yeah. And we have great data on this too. We have valve turners that go out and they'll tell us this valve is nearing failure or this valve is already broken in whatever its position. We have the data. We have to go out there and actually fix these.
That was my question is, do we know which ones are broken?
We know a lot of them. There's still a lot of unknowns. And then the same thing when they go out there and they've identified, you can see this picture has 3 valves on that T. That might have been a T that was installed so long ago, it just had 1. So as they're out there, they're gonna actually install 2 more. And that helps us with that operational flexibility during these critical times. So this is like painting the Golden Gate Bridge. When we finish this, we're just gonna start over again. This is probably something that doesn't ever, is there a question? Yes.
Yeah, this is gonna toward you, Jake.
Mhm.
Just to back up a little bit on the follow-up what Clint was just saying on in-house, possibly of some of the design phase. Is the standard in water agencies that you know of that do they or do they not have the staffing to do stuff?
Not very many. Typically, any design projects, I mean, maybe some of this kind of stuff, the isolation valve, swap out, things like that. You'll do some in-house, because it's pretty easy to put together as built, those kind of things. But when you start getting into pipeline design and things like that, most agencies sub that out. And the reason being is, to do a lot of projects, I mean, you kind of need other than just pipeline replacements, right? Pipeline replacements, you might get away with, kind of your standard, just plan and profile kind of thing. But most projects, you need more staff. You have to have survey. You have to, there's a lot that goes into it, and it just typically doesn't pencil out to have that kind of staff in house that you're paying benefits to and all that. It's more cost effective to go, hey, I'm going to pay $40,000 and you guys are going to give me everything, right? Survey, background, give me the line work and that, because at times too, it's hard to keep those kind of staff busy, right? If I hire an AutoCAD designer now, if I start a heavy pipeline replacement program, it might be a different story. And, and we have talked about, these are being done in-house, a project here, a project there. I think at some point, and this is actually something that we had implemented at a previous agency, was we actually bought a whole new set of equipment, hired a whole crew that was completely capitalized and started doing these projects, right? That's all they did. They didn't work on line breaks. They didn't work. It was just capital replacements. They were budgeted against the capital budget. So, I mean, if you get to a point where you're doing that and you've got a full crew and they're working all year and that kind of thing, it's a pretty heavy investment up front though, right? You're talking, I think we spent $1.5 million or so on equipment and trucks and that, and then 4 or 5 new staff. So you're talking another $700,000 a year in labor. You know, at that point, maybe, yeah, maybe you think about how I'm going to bring, you know, the one thing I know Fallbrook does a little bit of it. Fallbrook does a little bit of their own in-house. They, you know, they've got some engineers that kind of do both, you know. And so they do some of that things. They've run into some trouble with their stuff too. They've had their learning curve on that. So I think there's a point where it could make sense. I think for us right now, I don't think we have enough to really have somebody on full time, unless you had somebody like that, you know, an engineer to just happen to have a specific set of skills that worked. But I think if you had a larger program, that could be something to look at in the future.
Have the agencies done any cooperative programs in this area?
We've talked about it. I mean, we've talked about it.
You take Fallbrook, Oceanside and Rainbow. Our CIP activity may be enough to fund a core group of.
I think if you hired a construction crew, you'd be fighting over them. That would be the
Yeah.
problem.
Yes.
Yeah, you know.
Yes.
But we have talked about that. You know, potential shared resources, and you know, again,
Or the engineering work alone.
engineering too. Yeah, yeah. So, I think as we move forward, I mean, that's a whole nother kind of probably conversation. But I think as we move forward, we'll probably talk more about that. I mean, right now we're talking about interconnects, and I'm sure there'll be more in the future. So I hope that answers it mostly. Yeah. Yeah. Not very many agencies that do a lot, you know, that kind of work in house.
And it basically it's because of the size of the agency, you believe?
Well, it just, I think a lot of it just doesn't pencil out, right? Just doesn't pencil out. It's easier to extend your staff when you need them with consultant help, and you know, you're not employing somebody full time, and you know,
I mean,
and then
if you
there's
look-
lulls. You got nothing for them
You
to.
look at our 5-year CIP plan that we've just thrown up, which is ballpark, is,
Yeah.
you know,
Yes.
how do you,
And you're paying CalPERS, and you're paying
Yeah,
medical
and
benefits.
when we
and, you
when
know.
we have meetings with our FPUD and Valley Center and other agencies that do have these capabilities, and you talk with them and how's it going? It's like, well, Chad was on PTO for 2 weeks, so we had to sub that out, and he got called off to go help operations do that. They're not just in deep work all the time
Right.
banging this work out. They're constantly being poached to go do other things as well. So as Jake said, it's something to be
Yeah.
considered. Absolutely.
This VAL program, though, this is a great program. Our insurance people look at things like this when you have programs like this, like Aqua JPIA, when they're kind of taking a look at what you do and how you do things. These are important pieces on making sure your standing is very good with your insurance group. Because if you can minimize shutdowns, I remember hearing an example. I got to stop talking so much because we're going to be here all day. But they actually gave an example where it was a leak in LA that flooded out Poly Pavilion. And the reason,
UCLA.
yeah, and the reason is because they couldn't shut it down. The valves didn't work.
Yep. And
so Aqua JPI actually gave that example. Like, this is something that we look at. Are you exercising your valves? Do you have a valve replacement program and those kind of things? So these are, and just operations wise, it's just the truth. I mean, you got to do it. These are super critical. So
I'd be interested in knowing specifically what they want agencies to focus on so that we're paying attention to
Yeah.
that too.
Okay.
I'm very much support for this. I know that the valves are very expensive to
Yes.
replace, like 10,000. So this isn't a lot of valves, and there are a lot in the system, I'm sure.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
And
Chad, question on this, the pricing estimates throughout the years. What's the rationale for the Portland
good.
numbers?
Yep. So on the lower years, we've already procured the actual valves, and now you're looking at staff time. And on the larger years, we're actually going to go out and buy some more valves.
Okay.
yeah, this has kind of been the rhythm, you know, so far. Again, this could change. And if you start ramping it up, then that could change. But yeah,
And
great question.
yeah, the lead times. Robert's placing orders for what he thinks he's going to need 2 years from now, placing them today. The lead times are still astronomical. And we're all still borrowing from each other. Everyone is calling everyone else can I borrow this and I'll pay you back in 6 months, in a year? I mean, we're all still doing that. Any other questions before I move on this one?
I was just going to say really quickly, even larger agencies. So it just came from Coachella, $500-600 million a year budget, maybe 200-300 million in CIP, 50 engineers. almost exclusively relied on engineering firms, still, even at that level. It's hard to get the specialty engineers when you need them all the time it's just easier with firms. So it's not exclusively, but even larger firms struggle with the same.
I think I only have like 700 more slides to go, so we're really going through this. The pressure reducing stations, again, this was originally owner furnished equipment that was going to be bid out. The contractor ended up wanting out of the construction agreement. The district worked with that person, and as the engineering department was getting ready to go out and rebid it, the operations department said, we can save time and money and just do it ourselves. And so they've been doing that. And so again, I can't applaud this operations department enough for rolling up their sleeves and asking constantly, let us go do that. Let us go do that. That would be a great one for our one. I think you only have 2 or 4 more left. 3 more left in the lower yard. Every time I go down there, there's another one missing. So it's getting to
our plug and play systems.
This is correct. This is what we call, so this is a company called EFI. It's out of Centralia, Illinois. They're also the ones who are manufacturing the pump stations. This is doing the opposite. This is reducing the pressure. We call these dog houses. A lot of residents, Bill Stewart and I, in our, I think, very early meeting, are outraged at what it's going to look like. And then I'll walk them, around the corners. This is, oh, that's it. And so these are very aesthetically pleasing, but we also can do these where it's an above ground structure. We'll put up we did it on Gerd and Sarah Ann. And if people are like, I don't want to look at that thing in the chain link fence, we'll put in some privacy slats in there as well. But these are very nice. I think that going forward, I don't know if we'll be doing another large order like we did. I think we did 10 originally. It was before I was hired to do that. And you'll see this ends because we get through the 3 that we have. And then we're going to evaluate again. We have the hydraulic model. We have the master plan. Does this area still need 300 plus PSI? Maybe it does. If it doesn't, deploy something like this. But we also have the capabilities to build something like this in-house. We don't have to procure this from a third party. So we can buy these pieces and parts. So that's more to come on that one. The Camino del Rey water line. This is like we've been talking about what Rick, you said, gray area of accounting. This is the gray area of water line because the numbers just don't make any sense. This is you can see the red there on the screen. It's a pretty good corridor of pipeline. This is a County of San Diego driven project. They're going to be addressing some line of sight issues as well as some flooding issues, which impact the district's facilities. This has been going on about 5 years that I've been here, where the district feels, and their legal general counsel has opined that we have the prior rights in this area, and therefore anything that needs to be done to district facilities is going to be on the County of San Diego. The county has found it was 1898. They found a document dated 1898. I thought I could read cursive. That is a different type of cursive to read. They now feel that they have a stronger leg up. So this 100,000 that you see here, if the board and committees recall, it's always been 25,000. It's been for a very little bit of legal and some staff time. And the county hasn't really been ramping up this project. They have not wanted to discuss this project with Rainbow. That has changed. They are at full design now. They want to go do this work. Our water line would be incredibly deep if we kept it and proceeded. So there's a lot of coordination. So we are actually reviewing their documents that they have now provided to the district. We're having our own survey conducted, and then we will have a follow-up call with the general manager's department and legal to hash this out. So this 100,000 you see is a placeholder for that. And we have the 25,000 in year 2. This could change. It could go significantly down or the other way. So more to come on that, possibly in a closed session at a later date. 1898, yeah. We had to check it for authenticity. It's like, really? Wow. Okay. All right.
Did you carbon date the paper?
Yeah, exactly.
Antiques Roadshow.
Exactly.
Antiques Roadshow.
Nossaman validated it is a legitimate document.
San Diego, even a county in it.
I know. Incredible. All right. The manual transfer switches. This is what we want them to look like. It was interesting as we're doing this, a couple of the different departments, and Jake especially, like, you're putting all this shiny stuff. Is it really look like that right now? I was like, no, it actually doesn't. These don't look anything like this. This is what we want them to look like. This is a safety concern. This is something that Ahmed's team goes out and does, where they have to take live power, very high voltage stuff. They put on these very specialty suits. I'm sure they say something and they reach with one arm and they turn off the power, they do their work, and then they do the exact same thing to re-energize it. It is extremely dangerous. By installing these manual transfer switches or MTSs, it becomes a plug and play. This is like at home plugging in a generator. It is much safer, it is much faster. And we have 3 more sites to go. Ahmed has been more than patient. I started this 5 years ago. We got through 2 or 3 of them, and we just keep deferring these. So this is in year 1. We want to finish. I'm at 100% design. We just want to get these last 3 out, and those 3 sites are listed here.
Chad,
Yes.
I have seen some of these and it is a safety issue.
It is.
Critical.
Yeah. And at the newer sites that we're building, we're not even, some of them don't even get the manual transfers. We get automatic. So the power goes off, the site automatically knows the generator kicks on for us. But those are only sites with generators. So lots of updates. I know we're gonna have to like bring Mark or Ed in their suit one time to just show what it actually looks like. Okay. Jake, you want to take first crack at this one?
Um,
The gray area of general management.
yeah. District headquarters, obviously, we've been talking about this the last couple months and we're kicking off a ad hoc meeting. I think we've got one set for next week. This really covers a couple of things. One thing is we do have some kind of immediate needs that we need to take care of. We took care of the roof, at these buildings 2 and 3, but this administration building, same kind of issues. We've been kind of patching leaks as they pop up, but really it needs a new roof, even in the short term. And so we did get a quote from the same people that did that. At the same time, the HVAC is, at 30 some odd years old, maybe more, and needs to be replaced as well. We've been kind of holding off on all these things.
We've replaced it 2 or 3 times over the last 7 years.
No.
Wow.
We've done spot repairs and we've installed units like these mini splits, but these are not throughout the whole building. We only did them here and in the lobby. And then in the windows that we could do some AC units and heaters, we did little window mounted ones. But the ones up, when I met the HVAC technicians on the roof, I'm not kidding you. They took pictures, selfies, and sent it to their peers. They could not believe these were still in service.
So we've got that kind of programmed into year 1. But then also, costs to continue with the analysis that was started back in 2020 or 2019, whatever that was. We wanted to put some costs to this thing, just not knowing exactly which direction we're going to go precisely, right? Where are we going to end up? Because we know, the development, not the theory, but the development plan, it certainly looks promising, right? There's a value that was thrown out on the property, and if you could get this many units, and this would, those kind of things. We know there's a lot of headwinds to that though too, and we're gonna dive into that. We're actually setting up a meeting with the county. That'll probably come after our first ad hoc meeting, but to try to talk through some of those things. But we just know, from issues that we've heard from everyone else, if you're doing a VMT calculation and you have no supermarkets and you have no facility, nothing nearby, it's very difficult to push a development through. And so there's things like that create some headwinds. And we're not even sure what else. That's what we're going to really dive in on, those plans that were created. I know there was a lot of and I've been talking with the proponents of that previously, just to kind of get myself a background, and they had said they'd kind of taken a middle road on, well, we think the setbacks will be this bad, but is it really? Well, we're not sure yet, right? Exactly where those your impacts to the environment and those kind of things, the bugs and bunnies and sorts. Haven't dug in deep with the county yet to really find out, what some of those constraints would be. And so I think we want to do some of those things. That being said, I mean, I think we're heading down a path where we're going to look at these things, right? And what's the best path forward for the district. We wanted to put something here that at least started to program out what could happen, right? You've got, you know, and I think either path you go, you know, even if you're if you go down the development path and hey, we're going 100% down, you know, redeveloping this site and we're moving, right? If you want to continue down that path, at some point there still is a significant investment that you have to make, right? There is a CEQA document you have to prepare, an EIR, and really a decision you have to make on how far the district wants to take it. Do you want to take it through entitlements? Do you want to take, you know, I mean, your highest value is going to be getting it to where you have graded lots, but that's really not our business, to be quite honest with you. And so at what point do you know, split off? And this is assuming you go down that direction. The other option is, you know, you stay here and you fix the facilities, right? You do what you need to do to rehab those facilities. So we tried to kind of strike a middle ground here where, hey, we know when regardless of which path this goes, you're going to have to start to make some significant investments. And so we plug those in here, and it's kind of a best guess at this point, but let's get at least some funding in there. And whether, hey, sell the property and you make it all back, that's, you know, that's great. But we got to start programming these things in so we can, again, allow our financial people to start to come up with some plans on when and how you could actually accomplish this. Because I think if you wait too long and you actually don't start committing to these things, I mean, we'll be in trailers. Yeah, we'll be in trailers. I mean, that's me. And hey, Robert will tell you it's not the worst thing.
I can say the same. It's not bad. I have the wood paneling in mind.
But again, these are the decisions we're going to have to make. So we wanted to program in here. Again, this is kind of probably a little looser than most of the other projects where we're really kind of putting pen to paper on these things. But again, wanted to get something in there to say, hey, we're going to, you know, we've got to start charging at this thing because time is not on our side. So
Jake, how many acres is this district headquarters? Because
61.
Fallbrook owns other parcels here and there, correct?
well, the district headquarters itself, the upper and lower yard is about, it's about 30 acres in total. Some of it includes, you know, areas down in the river. So it's non-developable, non-usable. But I think that's probably, you know, maybe 4 or 5 acres of the 30, right? You've got about, when they looked at the development plan, I think they had come back and said that there was about 14-ish with all the setbacks and different things that were developable. Again, kind of making some moderate assumptions, right? That whole area down there is in the county floodplain. So if you look at the maps, it's in the county floodplain. So what are you going to have to do? You know, obviously you're going to have to build the site up, and there's things that have to be done. And but that's kind of it. We do have a couple of other properties. We actually have one right up the road, Bonsall Reservoir. It's about a little over 6 acre site, right off Highway 395. So actually me and Chad took a drive up there. I'd never seen it. It's actually I mean, it has an old reservoir on it, but it's a really nice piece of property. I mean, if you have a little vision,
Yeah, it's got a wall already built.
if you've got a little vision, it, you know, with a little grading, it's actually a really nice piece of property. We do own a couple other pieces of property, one up by Beck, that not really viable for a district headquarters site or even a operation maintenance yard. Just the ingress and egress wouldn't really be great there. But again, I think as we move down this, you know, ad hoc meets and we start moving down this path, I think those are all the things we want to take a look at, right? Is
Beck Reservoir, you've already got a paved area.
Yeah.
right. Yeah. Yeah. I had a joke there, but I won't even go there.
The site across the street's still dead officially.
Yeah.
Well, yes. I mean, I think so. The sheriff, it didn't seem like the sheriff really wants partners, to be honest. Again, we're going to set up a meeting with the county, and I'm going to dig into it a little bit more just to kind of make sure, as far as the shared facilities go. But we'll see. That's kind of yeah.
Yeah, Jim.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about that site was it still wasn't large enough for all of our operational needs. We were still going to need either something here or something down the road very nearby.
Yeah.
So it solved part of the problem, but still not all of the problem.
So, but it, most recent, it was kind of a no, thank you. We're going to use this entire site, coupled with we're 7 to 10 years out, which, I mean, if we're going to move, maybe that's not the end of the world, right? I mean, we'd probably potentially be in a little bit better position at that point to do some of those things. So, we won't kill it just yet, but as of right now, it doesn't look tremendously promising. I'll say that.
Yeah, there's a lot of hands went up on this slide, so.
After district headquarters, I suggest that we take a 5-minute break.
Okay.
Okay.
That sounds great. This is the last slide of the thing too. I think,
Correct.
of the first set.
Yep. Were there other questions on district headquarters?
No.
Oh.
I have a question on another item on the spreadsheet
Okay,
this year.
okay. Want to do that before our break?
Okay,
Okay,
it's simple. I see that we have, and I'm happy to see it, 150 grand budgeted for vehicle/equipment acquisition.
yep. Can you
Is
pull
that
up the spreadsheet?
standard replaced just based on our standard cycle, or are we ramping up to do some construction work and we're buying some stuff we need for that?
Wait, can you just tell me what, are you on it says NA vehicle equipment acquisition?
Yep.
Yep, okay, perfect. So, right there. It's, so for those viewing online, let's just turn it on. It is the last row that says NA. So this is operational need. This is tracked as CIP, but it's not a project. It looks like Robert has already grabbed it.
I don't know if it's routine stuff that we annual replacement, or is it something, are we buying some special stuff to do the work?
No, so we have a 10-year vehicle replacement plan. So we look out 10 years, what vehicles taking into consideration, like how long that vehicle's estimated to last. So if it's a diesel vehicle, it could last up to 15 years. If it's a regular pickup truck, we should be able to get 10 years. Then we go farther into the vehicles and we say, okay, how much work have we done to the vehicle to keep it running? How many miles does it have? How many engine hours does it have? We go through that rigmarole and we lay out a 10-year plan. This is not any new equipment. This is replacement of existing equipment.
That's all I wanted to hear.
That's all it is.
And that includes, that's also the 500,000 a year, that's just replacing the existing?
Correct,
Thank you.
correct. Yes, sir.
Robert, but does this also affect, I believe in the 2025, where the mandate of the state that we have?
EVs.
Yeah, to start converting our fleet over. And that's something we're gonna have to consider.
So last year I went to a conference, ACT conference in Anaheim, specifically talking about these new mandates, unfunded state mandates, by the way. Last week, myself, our fleet mechanic met with SDG&E because they have a program called Power Your Drive, where they will assist you with some of the costs. So we kind of explored options with them, but what was an interesting tidbit that they think, and I've yet to verify this, but they said because our vehicles, we have a 50 vehicle or less fleet, we may not be impacted by that. And I said, I'm not sure about that. I need to get into that a little bit further. But what we also found out was the state is more focused on the larger vehicles, the 3/4 tons and larger, instead of our 1/2-ton trucks, the smaller trucks. So yeah, we're trying to figure this out, the complications in all this. So there was this meeting with SDG&E actually left us with more questions than answers. So
Yeah. I reviewed the vehicle replacement plan. It looked like I don't think until year 3 we had any medium or heavy duty replacement scheduled. So and then the light duty vehicles fall outside of that ACF, the CARB mandated ACF. But it's coming. It's coming. In the next few years, we will have to deal with it.
But it should probably be paired with the headquarters design too.
That is
exactly.
That's kind of been some of the, do you actually do something here? Or that's kind of a timing driver
Or
too.
you go across the street at the park and ride, they have charging.
There you go. Park all of our vehicles.
It's SDG&E actually said that to us in the meeting. They're like, there's a charging, and I'm like, yeah, no, that's not gonna work.
Jake, I will volunteer to drive the cart back and forth for the,
But it is something to think about with a new building because
Shut-
now if you do solar on the rooftop, solar, you can offset some of those costs.
Mhm.
If you're doing charging stations, that's a completely different transmission line from SDG&E, a new meter. It's so it would make sense to incorporate that with a new building because then you're building, if we do it now, we may end up tearing all that out to build the new
Yeah.
building, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's trying to find that balance, timing and money, all that together.
It probably doesn't have to be an all or nothing thing either. Like maybe Rainbow could get one of those cool Tesla trucks and try it out.
I haven't seen a cool Tesla truck yet. I haven't seen that.
It's the one that looks like it's
Oh,
a
that might-
stealth vehicle. It's all square panels.
Yeah, I've seen those. I was looking for a cool one. That's what I.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Somewhat sarcastic.
It is kind of cool. It is. Kinda cool.
okay. Any other questions on what we've discussed thus far? I'll defer to President Hamilton if you want to call a recess.
Take a 15-minute break.
Okay.
Well, they bring us back on the 40 till, and there's only a small, well, but there's 5 people in front of you. So.
Yeah.
I think we can go faster now. I think we can go faster now. The year one was kind of the.
So glad you. Normally, we don't have.
This one's gonna be long.
It's gonna be real long.
Right? Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Robert, is it okay to use that pattern?
I only knew that. Oh, there's one more.
Yeah, I'm gonna also take a break. No, this is I'm actually good because it allows me to shift the weight.
Want to get up and stretch your legs?
In a second, yeah.
Yeah, Monday I'm not gonna be available, but Tuesday I'll be available next time. So. This was yeah. For sure. Yeah, you guys are, this is kind of, I just came in. You guys- The other thing too, I've been doing research into is I've heard of. So this is a really cool, this is really awesome. So just as water's produced.
I'm okay. I'm not in a rush to go deal with horses.
It's actually produced in the earth. And this
Have
is
you all looked at
to-
at
there's
alternatives?
theories of like abiotic petroleum being
You know,
used
I look at
in-
enhanced
It's usually-
lift station pumps and relining North River Road
They
at
drill
20 million bucks.
and model.
And you look at
Powering a whole village of 6,000
the
people.
expansion east
And
of
it's come down around.
the 15. Is there a point? Where's the crossover point we're saying?
Hydrogen could potentially
Rather
be
than
similar to
expand this
maybe the
capacity,
rise. And so.
no,
that could be
put a
in the
treatment
future,
plant
something long-term that could be
there,
something
and
that,
then all you're doing is
you know,
pushing your brine down
energy water
to
districts out here
through that line.
be looking through. So the
Yeah,
geology.
in other words, you don't need to upgrade the
Very-
capacity because you're pushing
very
less material through it. And I don't know where the breakover
I think
point
my
would be.
advice to you guys is to help bring in
Huh?
friends, experts.
Yeah, well, you have
know-
a brine
I know some,
outfit.
but I'm not an expert necessarily, so bringing in someone who has more.
Right.
Hi, Robert.
Well,
It's the teacher.
if you're treatment, we're getting to the point where shower to flower, you know? So that's reusable water that we can
I
capture.
can give it a.
Okay. I didn't know if you were going, if you had me done.
Mhm.
So you're going every day? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'm still trying to find how we can.
Then you can really.
Yeah, you got Moon Nurseries all up and down the expressway.
I mean, we're just gonna go here. It's a funny day, nice, right?
Sure.
I'll tell you now. I have to pick it up. Oh, okay. Yeah.
I think you will. I mean.
A lot more one, you know. More wine places.
Well, I called find like East.
Yep.
Says every 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm not much of a city.
I've been reading agreement on that.
No, to be driving around looking for parking can make me nervous.
So let's talk next week.
There's time to do it.
Oh. It's.
There's nothing to
I
talk
consider
about,
ourselves- We need. to-
We start like fogging out. We're like,
We do.
not really.
Everything
Yeah.
starts
to- Yeah,
because you'll see when we
No, I
come
was
back
glad you
in,
said that.
everybody's gonna be.
A little bit more
Yeah,
refreshed.
they'll just be prepped.
Yeah.
And I don't, if I don't
No,
spend
we
the
should
$20 million
See,
here,
this is the thing. I'm
20
not
million is to upgrade
gonna be able to make
the capacity,
people-
and I move that capacity up to the head somehow where I can get some benefit from it, then I can keep using this existing system.
Melissa,
Yeah.
I can't commit myself to that time frame.
That would be a huge.
Well,
So
they did
that's-
ask me.
And
because you and I
discharge it
were
into the
talking.
current wastewater, and let Oceanside deal with it.
Right.
It's
That's
gonna be a
when I
busy
was supposed to be burying my mom, when you and I were going.
Yeah.
So I knew,
I know.
but the timing for April for me is just.
Yeah, well.
But at least at least you have a way to get the brine to, to not have to truck it out.
But I had
To
so
be
much
here
stuff,
today.
I had so much stuff going on at work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not a great way to run.
Yeah, it's.
Well, we
Right.
got our scheduled comments and stuff, but I was really, I was talking to my husband, okay, what's 3 hours later? and
Terry,
someone
my
comes
question
down,
was
you
we
know,
look at
they
$20
leave,
million
all of a
in
sudden I went,
cost to upgrade lift
This
stations
gotta go.
and
This has to get
expand
off
the
my
capacity on North River Road. And that's expensive because that's a deep line. It's
Yeah.
like 25, 30 feet underground.
Okay.
And
No,
that's $20 million. If we spent that on
I'm still
a
seeing-
treatment facility up here on the east side of the thing, then the capacity for that line is not being exceeded. We can just still move efflux down to
Well-
where it could be disposed of.
Gonna go a little faster now.
Yeah.
I would-
And they'll pay mileage, but they have to pick up the parking.
Yeah, okay. All right.
I'm sure.
Hey. No, it's real easy. You take the treated water, you're up here at the north end, you run it a little farther north up the Montserrat Narrows, you pump it into the ground and you pull it out down in this area.
That's why you'll.
Right.
You'll find out.
I come down running down like, oh my God, someone's like headed waiting.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying it's kind of like thinking out of the box rather than going, well, we need to increase the capacity, so let's go dig up the pipe and put a bigger one in.
The next time it comes around.
As we get there.
Particularly since we just relined that pipe.
Yeah.
Well, we had-
I know.
You have to have something.
No.
Yeah, it's a clay pipe and it's collapsing.
Oh, that's great. That is great.
Yeah.
Okay.
More than me. I got like a Mac.
Okay.
Carry something around. Yeah.
Oh, the
Oh.
senator? No, you're talking about the lady that's not rerunning, that was appointed by Newsom. Yeah,
Oh, yeah, she's not.
she's not running. It's down to Schiff and yeah.
I have no idea.
He was
Can you mute the room?
It was good and it wasn't going, and I just looked at it and said.
Oh, okay.
Envious.
With that.
We did.
Hey, but that doesn't mean we have to spend the money on it. That's what they do.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't have to watch it.
Probably get some kind of-
Apparently, you can download it, there's a stop of it. You can see the whole damn movie. And once I watch it, I delete it. Yeah. We're getting close.
Call to order. Let's get moving.
Okay. Understood.
As we move into 2 through 10, and I won't take a lot of time, but I'll just say, you know, I mentioned this at the beginning, like basically our budget's going to be based on year 1. You know, 2 through 10 is the planning tool, right? It's really the planning tool. It'll probably change maybe this year. You know, we may move some things and depend on comments that we get today. Depending on kind of how our financial, you know, as we start to run all these things through kind of our financial model, things could, and most certainly by the time we get back here next year, things will move, you know, things happen and you move up and you move back. So Chad's probably gonna move through a little bit faster on these ones. Well, you got one sewer project for this year, but
I blazed through 24-25 sewer.
but it's basically, this is a listing. It's where we think they best fit. And then as you go on, these are always what do you call it? A living document.
There you
A
go.
Living document.
There you go. So as the Engineering and Operations Committee, Budget and Finance Committee, and the board will recall, 24-25 for the last several months, if not year, has had $0 in this upcoming fiscal year for this. That said, we had an emergency generator at one of our sewer lift stations go out. The district has one towable emergency generator that is now permanently deployed at that location. So we now don't have an extra towable emergency generator. This is a real picture. Jake had mentioned these are circa 84, 89 era Generac. You say this to our technicians and they all just kind of cringe. And the parts to replace it when something goes out can be $20,000, $30,000, whereas a replacement's about $100,000. And another part could break as soon as you replace that part, if you can find the part, as we've said. So we've bumped this into year 1. This is to replace 3 generators. The Rancho Viejo, which is the subdivision just to the southeast of us under the freeway. That's where our emergency one is currently deployed. So we would like to replace that and get that up running. Headquarters B plant, there is actually a sewer lift station in our lower yard right behind us all. And then the Rancho Montserrat, which is the trailer park off of Doolin. That one is currently in a vault, which is not where you want a diesel powered or any powered generator to be, in a vault that can collect water. We want to bring that up above ground, bring it to current technologies, build some soundproofing walls around it and go. So year 1 is now showing some funding in sewer.
And you'll see as we go through the financials, there is some constraints on the wastewater side that are gonna, so you see the little footnote here where grant funding, we've actually already kind of initiated kind of a hard search on you know, searching out grant funding for this project to help fund it. So that's kind of where it sits.
Chad, the lead time on these generators?
It could be anywhere from 6 months to 12 months when you place the order. 6 to 12 months when you place it. Okay, so now we're going to focus on pipe. So these are now broken down. So years 1 through 5 was all projects. Now we're going to break it down into categories. So you have the pipeline replacement projects, years 2 through 10. So this is the GERD to West Lilac pipeline rehabilitation. This is an existing pipe that is abandoned in place. It goes under Highway 76 and the San Luis Rey River. We would like to reinstate that water line using some CIPP technology and go for that. You can see that we have some design and studies in year 2 with construction in year 3. The Gopher Canyon water pipeline improvements. This project was actually put out to bid, I believe, in 2019. I think it was like my first board meeting here. And it got pulled during the district had not checked all of the CEQA boxes. And so that was pulled from bidding. We still have a very beautiful 100% biddable design that we would need to dust off. So that's why you can see some money in year 3. Go back through those plans, make any necessary changes. Did we catch it all? Do we need to extend the pipelines? All of that. And then you have the price to replace it in year 4.
You do recognize where that pipe is.
I do.
located.
I know exactly where that is actually.
Chad, question for you. Get back on the GERD one, the reinstating.
Yep.
Is that then also to provide additional capacity for the development, what, vessels or whatever it's going in there?
It does not provide additional capacity from them. Their water will actually be coming from
Yeah.
395 through Doolin and down and West Lilac. This is more so with some operational flexibility, Flint's favorite term, to help us get the water moving around in that southern zone.
Thanks.
Yeah, right now it has to go all the way around 76 and West Lilac instead of straight through. But we want to avoid Caltrans, we want to avoid Fish and Wildlife, and so that's why we would go under everything.
Thank you.
No problem. Okay, Gopher. Good pointing out. You guys all recognize exactly where we are in the district on these maps. Roy Line, I have a note here. I'm going to change this name. I couldn't find out. And Jake even asked, who or what is Roy? We don't know. So we're going to go with everything else and we'll rename this project. It'll keep the same project number, but it'll be actually the street it's on so that not only staff knows where it is, but anyone else, ratepayer, member of the public would knows. On this one, this is off of North River Road and it's just a small extension. Okay, we get through these FPUD connections. These are the remaining 4 of 6. Again, these are in the outer years because we don't know if we'll need these. We might do the pump station project. We might get the Gopher pump skid up. And the first 2 that staff is proposing, and we come back to operations in a year or 2, they're like, yeah, we absolutely do not need these. And these would then fall off. But we want to keep them on in the program so that everyone is tracking it.
And correct me if I'm wrong, this is probably Robert would correct me if I'm wrong, but some of these too aren't southern zone related. A couple of them are just operational related, like the north side zone tie-in. That's that single feed that takes out the whole north part that would be, yeah. So there's some other operational benefits that, again, these guys have been exploring. Again, these are kind of pushed out and maybe some further evaluation, but projects we may take on in the future.
On the FPUD one,
Yes.
FPUD Burma Road,
FPUD, oh, okay, so let me advance. Got it.
Burma.
Got it.
sorry, did I skip too far ahead on?
That's okay.
My only question is why wouldn't you also realign the connections off of Burma Road instead of cutting through those 3 properties?
Okay. Robert, is that something, have you weighed in with FPUD on that?
Nope, haven't even, that's our line, but
It's our lines.
we didn't even look at that and consider that. But it makes sense.
And you go right through those.
Yeah.
You probably have a house sitting on them if you.
Yeah. So the engineering team is all on Zoom as panelists right now. We didn't want to fill the room with even more bodies. And so they will be taking notes on this FPUD, Burma Road and Sleeping Indian with that exact. That's a great comment. Okay, and then this is the last of the 6, the Sanchez Zone, North Side Zone, to help Rainbow Hills Reservoir. Again, in that outer year 3.
You're saying all of these may or may not be needed. right?
These 4, correct. These will be reassessed. Eagles Perch. Again, we have some leak data over the years. We also have pipelines that are dead ends, as the Engineering and Operations Committee is well versed. We do not like dead ends. It's what, as Director Dale stated, it leads to water quality issues. We have to go out there and flush. We want a loop system wherever possible. This is also traversing through private property, people's backyards, people's water. Your water meter might be on 3 properties down and you're having private easements. We also could add some fire protection in this area, which I know former Director Gasca was a big proponent of. So this would realign it out into Camino del Rey and just put everything in the public right away. Everyone's meters where it should be, plus some fire protection added. This is a really nice to have project. That's why it's being shown in year 4. Yes.
I'm sorry, where is Eagles Perch?
Eagles Perch is just, it's a side street off of Camino del Rey.
Okay, thank you.
Just before the S curve, right?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
Okay. Rice Canyon main replacement, not to be confused with the 18-inch Rice Canyon transmission main that we just did. This is actually in Rice Canyon Road. This is a very old stretch of pipe. It's had 7 main breaks in I think 5 or 10 years. the breaks are big and it's a 2-lane, very narrow road. And so we want to replace, this is well past its useful life. So we want to replace that entire section of water line. Again, with some pressure reduction, with the 18-inch coming down from here, we haven't seen a whole lot. And I'm going to knock on wood right now. Breaks in the recent years, so it's out there in year 4. Again, it would be earlier if money was not an object.
This steel pipe,
That is a section of steel pipe, correct?
have we put cathodic protection on it?
We have not.
Wouldn't that potentially also help reduce? I mean, that seems to be a low cost, insurance policy.
Yeah, so in this section, because the road is so narrow and there's no shoulder, it just sloughs right off to the side. You would have to put those sacrificial anodes actually in the roadway. It's a good idea. You could do some geological studies to see if you could do some impressed current and things like that. We started the cathodic protection program. It's kind of like the valve isolation program, where it was a rolling fund. Let's identify some areas. That's an area that we could absolutely look at.
Okay.
Yeah. Great question. Paula Mesa Fairways. So this one was a lower dollar amount, and it was, and we didn't have time to update the red lines. This was from, was it HDR or Harrison Associates that put together that original? HDR put together the condition assessment back in about 2018-ish, and it only identified 2 streets within the whole Paula Mesa Fairways community. And so and this has just kind of been on everyone's back burner. Bill Stewart will attest there is many main breaks, but with the installation of those.
Don't we want to push that out maybe another 4 or 5 years?
Year 10, yeah. Yes, only 16 breaks. With the installation of, I believe, 3 pressure reducing stations to just this area, again, knock on wood, we have not had an additional main break since. But when we looked at this project, this was, why would, okay, so a firm said, go do these 2 streets. But if you're going to go tear up 2 streets, and we know we've had 15 breaks, let's do them all. And so we updated the cost per square foot or linear foot. And this project would be broken up into phases. The entire community would be done. And we've done that with a couple of these projects that were just shown. Sarah Ann, it just showed 400 linear feet. If we're going to go rip up a community, we're going to do it in phases. And so this is one of those. There's a lot of behind the scenes data on this slide that unfortunately I don't have to present today, but when this becomes an actual viable project, that will be done. Sarah,
What are those 2 streets?
the ones that were originally identified was Alamendra and I think it's Cerro were the only 2 originally identified.
I think it's Diego.
Diego. Okay.
Diego's. Believers.
Okay.
The 3 streets I'm looking at.
And this is this one, and I believe it's our next slide, Sarah Ann. Yes, these are complicated. These are narrow roads with a lot of water services, and we have to keep everyone in water. We have to have trash trucks. You have to have emergency services and delivery trucks all in and out as a contractor is ripping these roads up. So this will be a lot of logistics, but for us, this is something we really love, diving into these weeds and working on these logistics. So we want to do the same thing at Sarah Ann, and that's why we've changed the name, the entire community. This originally came, and it was just this very small section on that section of Sarah Ann that abuts Gerd Road, but it doesn't make sense to go do 400 linear feet when you can do the entire project. We would do it in phases so that the whole community is not impacted at the exact same time. You have ingress and egress routes set up. This project, though, when we did this, the wastewater operators came to us and said, you're identifying this water project, but there's the Fallbrook Oaks lift station right there. And the force main actually comes out to the south and runs through, it's adjacent to a creek. We would love to get that into the road right of way in case there was ever a break or a spill. In addition, the pump station, or the lift station itself is completely obsolete. Parts are hard to find, the generator, everything, all the electrical equipment. So this really morphed into a much larger project. And you can see we're combining the 6 number is a water project number and the 5 number is a sewer. And those are just where those different funds come from for finance tracking. So when we ultimately go out, we would do this as one comprehensive project with water and sewer with one general contractor doing this work.
Yeah, So this is, yeah, this is one of the ones with the pressure reducing station. I think,
Correct.
I think there was actually, what I saw, there was two of these roads had
Just two.
sections of
Mhm.
replacement.
As two separate projects.
Yeah, so it already had a significant amount of pipeline and then you said, well, let's get this while we're there. These ones too, I mean, you've got this out in year 5, year 6. I think this is one of the ones where, you know, if you got to a point where, okay, we're going to do a significant, you know, one you're going to keep an eye on, right?
Yeah.
This thing's had a bunch of main breaks,
Mhm.
you know, Palo Mesa and this one. If you start to see that kind of activity again, and you're going to do a larger debt financing, those are the kind of things we would
Mhm.
then, you know, you start to pull things up and do that. So again, we've kind of put these in years to kind of balance things a little bit, but that these are kind of keep an eye on them, I guess is the point.
Clarification.
Yes,
Year 5 is water, year 6 is sewer.
correct. Because the water takes into account design. We already have the design effort for the portion that we wanted to originally do, but the more comprehensive, we'd have to do some more design. So you're looking at design and some staff time and then construction costs in year 6.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, great question.
And Chad, is it manhole replacement or refurbishment?
So it would keep the force main. We haven't talked about the gravity system within that community. No, we have not talked about that, Carrie. That's a great question. We can add that into as we get closer to this one, we'll take a note of that right now to look into manhole and gravity replacement as well.
Well, okay, it says manhole replacement there,
Yeah.
which was why I asked
Mhm.
Okay,
in the title.
Main and manhole replacement.
Yeah.
okay. Let me look into that.
It looks like that's associated with the lift station.
Yeah, I will get clarification on
Yeah.
that. These are great questions. Thibodeau water main replacement. This is a section that traverses an extremely steep backcountry slope. There is no other way to get to this section of pipeline. It serves about half dozen homes. The district has had past conversations with Vista Irrigation District to see if this would be something they'd be interested in taking over. They have facilities nearby. Those did not really yield positive results, but we'll put Jake back out on that speaking tour, go from there. And if not, this is something that we're proposing. Again, just lining the existing pipe. So it gives it another 30 to 50 years of life. Yes, I have 2 questions going up.
That runs along an existing property section barrier. I mean, it looks to me at the bottom like you're cutting between 2 houses.
Yeah, it goes up to a cul-de-sac and then it goes up the slope to the other street.
But they're at the bottom of the picture. There are 2 buildings that you're cutting between. That's
Correct.
correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
They're
One-
not the same property. They're
A barn, it's the same property, it's a barn and a house. Cut right between it. And then the heavy vegetation area
Yeah,
is an
it's
extreme
sloped.
slope. So the issue with this line is it's a 6-inch line, every time it breaks, depending on where it breaks, staff's either going up the hill and digging it out by hand and then bringing everything up the hill to make the repairs, or coming down the hill by hand. Yes.
What division is this?
Ooh,
Ain't mine.
I
it's
think
off a little Gopher.
it's going to be Division 1.
Should be
Division
one.
It'll be division. Most of these pipelines are Division 1.
Just wanted to check on.
And how close is Vista system to this?
It's been a while. since
It's
Low?
they're right off of Fairview, which is off of Gopher Canyon. So
Mhm.
at the bottom of the screen where those that's Fairview Street right there, they could feed that street, no problem.
Could be a
Can you
better
share
solution.
with them?
Yeah, could be a better solution.
That's a lot. $700,000 is a lot to serve 6 properties.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah,
perhaps it's cheaper for us to.
Offload.
maybe
Yeah.
we just build the interconnect for them.
There you go.
Possibly.
It's a
Right.
sewer line, right?
Mhm.
This is water.
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 Water. Give 'em a
E-
septic
Either,
tank.
either way, I mean, you know, building 100 foot on more or less level ground and going up that. slope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money for
Yeah.
the few residents.
Yep.
And is there potential to build there or is that,
No, it's
okay, so it's
built.
permanent?
Yep.
That those are the buildings.
We'll take a look at it.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
look at that one.
Yeah.
Okay, this one goes, you can see that alignment. This is going under the 15 freeway. This was in, I believe, before the 15 freeway was constructed. This is not something that we want to break nor dig up, but again, you'll see this. This is year 7 and 8. It's been doing very well. The one main issue with this line currently, in addition to its age, is on the existing T, there is only one valve, and that valve feeds the Rainbow Hills Reservoir. So anytime there's an area on this, the operators close that valve and you have now taken out every customer in that zone out of water. So what we want to do is when we replace that water line is replace that T and add 3 new valves there as well. So we can figure out which side we need to isolate, not just one and kill everybody. Okay, now we are moving to a different category. This is water pump stations and electrical upgrades. Yes.
This is an appropriate topic, but we have some really good pipeline placement problems. Really good. We're removing huge numbers of main breaks.
Yes.
Solving a lot of problems, getting rid of, making our customers feel more comfortable, et cetera, et cetera. And when do we, and of course, they're shown in all these out years. When do we have a conversation about changing the priority of the projects and looking at something like long-term debt financing? Bring these projects forward so that we can recognize what for our district and for our customers, the ratepayers, the extraordinary benefits that many of these pipeline rehab and replacement projects. Is this a discussion for today, or is this a?
I'm going to defer to Jake on this one.
Yeah.
You know where I'm coming from.
I do.
right?
I do.
Well,
Let's go get the meat.
and add to what Flint's saying is, if we're looking out 6 years, how many potential breaks are we going to have on that? What is the cost to repair those
Right.
versus going ahead and just replace them?
Yeah, I think, and this we'll get into the finances kind of the part of it, yeah, as we move forward in these workshops. But I think that is the tentative plan, is that when we have projects in these first couple of years that we absolutely just have to do.
Right.
And it's really taking a lot of our capacity to do much else. I think we still really need to look at year 1 to make sure that we can kind of do those things. What we had talked about was, timing wise, and Rick, yeah, feel free to jump in, was, once you start to realize some of the wholesale water savings, that does provide you potentially some capacity. And again, this kind of gets back to some of these bigger decisions that we're going to make over the next few months on what do we want to do with rates? What do we want to do, as you start to see those things kind of come to fruition. And that's why we want everybody in the room on these things. And that's one of the key parts is coming up with a point in time where you're actually going to have the debt capacity available to do a large set of projects. I think the thing, and this has kind of been my, mantra to Chad, I guess, is when we do that, I just want to make sure they're the right projects, right? We can't make a mistake on that, right? Given our size and capacity. And so I think that's kind of why we're driving that master plan first, spending some of that planning money first. But the reality is we were looking at probably in year 4, where you could actually kind of pile some of those projects together and do something like you're saying. But that's probably realistically what we're looking at, because you've got a few years to kind of climb out of, gaining debt capacity, realizing the savings after, exit fee payments and these, those are the things we have to factor in. You're confused? Okay.
We floated some debt, the money is immediately available. So then all that other getting benefits from detachment and water costs, all that stuff, homes and it supports our ability to pay the debt over time. But and I can't imagine that we would be making any terrible mistakes when I'm looking at projects with 26.
Don't forget, we may be floating debt to pay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But,
no,
but add to that, we may also be floating debt in order to pay off the exit fee.
I think you most certainly are, and that's part of the equation, right? You're gonna have to take on some debt to do that. And what that does to you is really, I think you've got to pay off some debt before you take on a bunch more. We have some of our debts that's falling off in 28. That was from the meter project. Some more a couple years later. So you start to free up some of that capacity, but I think most certainly, and again, we're going to make some of these big decisions over the next couple of months. So we're going to get to keep weighing in on what the timing looks like on all these things. But I think we're most certainly going to have some kind of financing in the short term that's going to limit your capacity to front load a bunch of these projects. That
You're also talking about the capacity to manage it all at once.
No.
Even if you did the debt finance.
I
do you
think-
feel like you could undertake more with the staff you have now, if you went out, and wanted to do all the pipeline.
I think you could, and we, just like we did for Thoroughbred and we're doing for the pump stations where, if you get a big project and you've got a bunch of other little projects going on, again, you can always extend construction management services and those kind of things. So I think, yeah, internally we could probably handle, if there were a few more projects under construction, you could handle it with some outside support. So I don't think that it's really not that capacity that's limiting.
Chad and his crew have lots of free time. They're not doing a damn thing between midnight, 5 a.m.
So I guess the answer is you're going to get some more opportunities to weigh in on timing of those things. But I think over the next couple of workshops, you're going to see a lot of those limitations and things. Go ahead.
Balancing act that you have to
Balance,
play.
it's a balance.
Yes.
Yeah, there's that's the trouble that we're going to be tackling the next couple of months is there's a lot of needs and sort of one bucket of savings to stretch over this and trying to keep rate increases reasonable within the blueprint, actually, hopefully under than what was already approved last year. And so to try and be as short as possible to answer you, Flint. One, we're going to have to issue debt this year just to get us through, whether that's exit fee or we call it for something else. And it will be a healthy amount. Let's say 10 to 15 million or something in that ballpark. Keeping in consideration, we have 30 now and our annual revenues are in the 40s. So it's a healthy amount for this district. It'll be shorter term, so it'll roll off quickly enough. But we're planning, I think year 4 is the magic year for us to issue debt, and we can decide then what the best projects to fund out of that debt, and maybe even roll some of these things forward if it makes sense to do that. You can do that then. But we need essentially some of the debt to roll off. We need to replenish some of our reserves. Our reserves are actually very low, and that's going to take a couple years to try and get those back. And you want to wait till you're financially stronger to issue the debt. Otherwise, you're going to be paying very poor terms. Banks are not kicking down the doors to try and loan to us right now. And so you wait a few years, you'll get much better terms, especially if we're looking at longer financing. And so that's the short of it is we don't really have the capacity in these next few years to do much other than what we have to do.
With our current financing,
Right.
if we could claim lead piping, we could get some government financing for like.
Well, that's another way. We're going to keep pursuing grant funding too. I put in an appropriations request last week to help fund our projects, but those are hit or miss. Those are hit or miss. Yeah. So, but we'll have more discussions on that. Yeah. It's good.
And to keep an eye on the Fed and state funding that's available. You have to have good credit.
That's part, it's the capacity that we're
Right.
talking about that makes me gasp.
Okay. So it says Lookout Mountain Pump Station electrical upgrades and a new emergency generator. This site is currently without an emergency generator. So the one that is the tow behind, depending on which zone needs it the most, that's where that one is deployed. The problem with only having the one emergency generator, as any operations staff will tell you, by the time you've found a rentable generator, deployed it and hooked it up, SDG&E has turned the power back on. It becomes a fool's errand. So to have these there during those times, because the duration could be an hour or a day or longer, we want those. And again, you're gonna see copied text, the word obsolete. This is not meant to be lightly or lose its emphasis. These sites are obsolete. We have very few parts. Some have no parts. They turn them off. They literally have to kind of do the song and dance to hope that it comes back on, kind of a thing. And then we talked about this one earlier. This is, we'll see. We put this one out there. We wanted this one really bad. The board actually adopted the lease agreement with the city of Oceanside. There was a lot of other logistical hurdles with Oceanside, VID, and the San Diego County Water Authority to get this one. We've been operating without it for a while, and so we've put this out into year 5, and this will be a to be determined project. Again, this is bid ready. We have 100% designs on this one.
I've got a question about that.
Sure.
What has the water authority said about that connection?
Lately,
Well, is this part of the detachment conversation at all?
It was.
Yeah.
It did.
Yeah.
It did come into it did come into play during the detachment, the settlement negotiations. Because we did want this. This is, feeds right to that southern zone, solves some of those issues for us. And didn't get a lot of traction because they do have to approve, I guess, those wheeling agreements. So we weren't getting a lot of traction there. Also, they were going to, I don't know, I'm on open mic, right?
being recorded, yes.
Well, it's all settled now, I guess. They were gonna basically, if this was in there, Oceanside could not be in the room because basically you've got a financial incentive that's attached to that whole thing. So we actually took it out of those agreements. The thing with this one that's interesting, City of Oceanside is going to have to rehab their Mission desalter facility. And I guess that's starting in January-ish, like start of next year. And it's going to be off for some period of time. And so what we've talked to the City of Oceanside a couple of times about this and other things that we've got going on, but they're going to have to lean on this for those couple of years. And it's actually, I think, it's going to be to their benefit. If you look at the new MET rates, that's the spread between raw water and treated water is expanding rapidly over the next 2 years. And so the City of Oceanside is going to get some benefit out of this. But that's what we talked about was kind of letting the dust settle. They're going to need this plant kind of fuller capacity over the next couple of years. And so probably after that, probably picking it back up and talking about,
You have it out at 5 years.
yeah, basically.
Let the dust settle. Really good.
Dust settle and let City of Oceanside kind of finish their project, and they're going to have excess capacity at that point. Right. So, yeah. There's the long
It's
story.
named really well, the permanent emergency interconnect.
Yeah. It would be nice to have.
It would be.
It would be.
Okay, we have the Gomez pump station electrical upgrades, very similar to the Lookout Mountain ones. A lower dollar amount. A lot of the pumps were in better condition. But again, the electrical cabinets, this is one of the sites that received a new emergency generator from the grant that we did receive from Cal OES. And when we went out there, you as the engineering department, you are expecting, confetti and ribbons, and the IT department's like, you're not doing anything with the electrical cabinets. So this is something that's been on their radar for a long time. We're plugging it in. It's again shown there in years 3 and 4. This is something that we would be funding in years 1 and 2 if we could. We want this is all critical infrastructure.
What all are we replacing? That's a lot.
Yep. So we want to upgrade the motor controls, the breakers, the relays, relays and the wiring to replace. So it's within the existing electrical cabinets, those breakers, Ahmed can attest to this. If something goes out, you have people scouring the earth. There's been talks of, well, there was one on eBay that we might be able to find. I mean, it is obsolete parts.
I think the question was the $1 million is.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mike, yeah. Someone has a mic?
So half of that amount is actually for all of the parts to get that with all of the motor controls, the breakers. We're talking about, 600 amp breakers and
Mhm.
up here. And then to replace all of that wiring. The other half is just basically for the labor to do that. Getting all of that thick wire pulled from the utility all the way from the utility breaker all the way to that equipment.
So you're saying $500,000 in, but just in material.
In materials
what you
alone.
guys
It
have.
was a little over $500,000 in materials.
So you're basically building a new facility inside the old one.
Trying.
Yeah,
And not even doing it all. We're not even doing it all. We're doing what we have to do.
You couldn't use some of the old wiring upside in it, why we have to build the old wire? Put it-
Most of that will have been degraded. We would probably just would want to sell that old wire and then get the newer ones, the insulation on it. It's been there for God, what?
Gomez?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say
years?
30 plus years.
So we wouldn't want to use the same wire, reuse it.
And this is, as Jake mentioned, this has not been designed. We know there's a problem. We know we cannot find parts to this. We know if it goes out, we are going to be in a world of hurt. But when we get into that design phase, that electrical engineer, the district staff, that's when this number really starts to get hardened in on exactly what it is. Is it a lot less than $1 million? Yes, you can reuse these things, or is it a lot more than $1 million? This is our best educated guess projecting out right now.
Question from that side. Is there any plan to? If this got a change, maybe build like 7-foot wall with some.
Make it look like the Thoroughbred lift station site.
Lived there for 30 years. I've seen a lot more activity.
Okay.
Want to actually
Mhm.
solve poverty. You know,
Harden it.
you got people
Yeah.
hovering, parking right next
Yeah.
to your gate. I'm going like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Mm.
So interestingly enough, we actually rely on people who are accustomed to a very quiet area. We hear something and calling either the district or the sheriff's department to go out and do that. So fortunately, we have been lucky in that the neighbors are kind of keeping an eye out.
But there's no neighbors around. So that's, I mean,
Yeah.
again, when I come home, like picking up my son from volleyball at 9:30, there's literally ball car, occasionally parked
Right there.
by your entry. I'm like, what is going on? It's just, I like the security lights,
Drug
I
deal.
guess you guys put on, that's nice. Exactly. But I just see more activity.
Okay.
Right.
So for that one, I'll jump in on that one. So if you go to the operations trailer over here, we've started putting cameras. A lot of the ones that Robert and his crew have flagged out as potentially activity that we don't want near our facilities. So we'll put a camera there and it'll be a good deterrent to that. So we'll flag the site as one of the ones.
Put a
that we need.
speaker out there
We need
too,
security.
kind of help you.
Yeah, there you go.
That's a good one. That would help a lot.
Yeah.
Because I mean, the only reason why we did have, what was it, 9 months, a year ago, we had two people that went over
Yeah.
here and cut the
Can
wire.
wire around the
They're
building, yeah.
carrying it. And look where kind of,
Yeah.
right? And where I'm at, that's like, there's no house there, little, so 1,000 yards. So
Actually,
it's just something to consider.
yeah, this is one of the sites that we're coming to.
And it's a great point. It's a great point when we get into design and we start talking about security. And then that's when I just need the board and committees to remember, you said $1 million, yes, but we added a block wall to it. So things do increase with cost. But yes, these are great comments and questions. The Vallecito's pump station replacement, again, It's lived its useful life. It's old. It's out of date.
Crazy question, Chad.
Sure.
We went to the dog houses on the pressure reducing station. Can we do that with pump stations
We-
too?
Absolutely. So the Rainbow Heights pump station was prefabbed. The 3 that we are constructing now will be prefabbed. Absolutely. In the meeting I had with the IT department, that was one of the things. You can see the shed, and it's a very similar structure at Gomez. And for anyone that's toured that, Robert and his crews installed the sprinkler irrigation at the Gomez site. But it's, you go to the Rainbow Heights pump station, a fire could come right through there. There's an emergency generator and there's an HVAC unit outside, but the building itself is hopefully going to be okay if that fire goes through quickly. Whereas this, everything is exposed. So that those questions are being brought up and discussed.
Okay.
Yep. And whether it's not prefabricated, maybe it is like we did at Thoroughbred. We build a block building ourselves kind of a thing. But yeah, absolutely. Get them out of the weather.
I was thinking just.
Like this. Moro is a great
time
example.
Replication costs, you know.
Yes.
Six of the same thing versus one of the same.
Yes, absolutely.
Because the prefab, what's nice about them is it's contained.
Yes,
And I know this one is not that large of a pump station.
correct.
And it would be an ideal candidate.
Yeah, absolutely. Getting that road traversing up to that site is the tricky part, but absolutely, absolutely.
Or helicopter.
Yeah, there you go. Moro pump station. So this is one that is actually already in a building. And so this is not prefab. This is something that you can build in place. When you stand in front of this one and you're looking at the house behind it, you know, you can see that even way back then, they tried to make this blend the best we could. With a new coat of paint, you could make it look even better. This is one that was offline when I was first hired. It's back online, but it's operating at minimal capacity. And so this is one that does also require some TLC. But again, it's in the outer years. We had to make staff choose what is your highest priority.
And this supplements the pressure coming out of the Moro Reservoir
The Moro tank.
tank.
The Moro tank. So we're using the Moro tank, which is adjacent to the Moro Reservoir. We're using that at half capacity right now for structural reasons. And this pump station helps push that water farther out.
Okay.
Great questions. All right. So we're now segueing to detachment requirements, years 2 through 5. So Flint, this kind of goes to your questions. What did we get out of this on the previous slide that was in year 1? This one is, all right, you are no longer using Water Authority connections 3, 6, 7, and 11. You need to decommission that. And that's currently broken into 2 phases. You have the interim decommissioning and then you have the permanent decommissioning. And so Jake is working with his counterparts. The different departments are looking at some of the ideas for vetting and is this logistically possible, how, when, but these are out there and it's scheduled for year 2. So this is one that we have to do.
Yeah, and this actually could move into year 1. So the interim, the way it works, the interim decommissioning, basically we're just taking them. Yeah, well, more than shutting it down, we're actually, removing some of the piping that's in the vault, blind flanging, kind of isolating the systems. At the 12 is already isolated. That's why it's not on here. But 3, 6, and so
in the title.
No, it's in the footnote.
Oh yeah, there's no interim decommissioning at 12.
Okay.
We got the title right, but
Got it.
yeah,
Strike and 12
on there because it's already blind flange. So we've never used 12 or haven't used 12
in years.
Yeah. So, but I think this actually could push into year 1. I think that number is actually going to come down. I don't think it's going to cost that much to do what needs to be done. Because I'm looking at the drawings now and I'm kind of seeing, okay, that it's not as extensive as I thought. But this is kind of the interim step. Nothing needs to be shut down, right? No aqueduct shutdowns need to take place or anything like that. It's just existing valves off of the connections and you can do the work. Chad's going to talk about the permanent decommissioning, which we agreed to. That's got to be timed with an aqueduct shutdown at a later date. So you'll see that out in like year 4, because I don't think there's really anything on the books for the County Water Authority to do that. So anyways, those are the 2 steps that have to be taken.
Do these projects impact us being able to start drawing water from Eastern Municipal?
No, these projects are post detachment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
And if they have an emergency down on Aqueduct 4, do we, wherever these valves are, 1 or 4, could they ask us to pull our decommissioning project forward?
Well,
Right now, you're timed on an anticipated shutdown.
yeah, no. We put that into the settlement agreement as well. Actually, we reserve for the permanent decommissioning, we reserve the right to program those into our CIP. So we told them we would time them with the planned shutdown, but basically within our 5-year CIP,
Not subject to, we're shutting down next week. We want you to go ahead and do your work.
yeah, no, that wouldn't be. Yeah.
When you decommission them, then. Oops, oh,
Yeah, we wouldn't own it. It's
so
yeah.
that building and everything would go back.
Well, it'll be
It's
decommissioned.
They're
They're gonna be. It's gonna be.
Old.
Yeah, it's gonna be demolished. Those are gonna be demolished. Yeah,
So I was thinking somehow they got vandalized or something.
Yeah.
Weird thing. Who's responsible?
it's still the County Water Authority facilities. These aren't changing hands or any of that.
Okay, I'm wondering if I got this slide title correct. And 12?
And 12.
Yes.
Okay, and the permanent.
Permanent.
All right. So this is the permanent. This is projected year 4. And this is where, so the interim, we're pulling some pipe. And in the permanent, you're completely demolishing. Okay. On to sewer for years 2 through 10. We talked about this at the beginning, that some of these, and this is one of them, would be developer driven. So right now, the way that the district sewer system is operating, this schoolhouse lift station is not necessary. Should the Ocean Breeze Ranch development come online, or the Thoroughbred racetrack facility expand, stuff like that, this would be what we're looking at, cap fee driven projects at a later date. But the district does own this site. It's already there. It's vacant, and we would then construct the facility should that time ever come.
So I thought Hayden had a really good idea, right? You know, when you were talking about the upgrades that were required on North River Road, that
Yes.
those were $9 million. And then there's this $10 million lift station expansion or creation. And then in later years, in the 10-year forecast, there's another 3 million for Old River Road lift station conversion. And I think it would be worthwhile to take a look to see if those additional sewer flows could be scalped off into a little package plant that the developer could potentially fund.
Yep.
And, you know, there's planning money right now at the state to look at these projects, $500,000. And then with the Bureau, there's $500,000. So, I mean, your planning study is paid for, but it might be a good use of that money and that resource rather than sending it
Yeah.
over to Weiss and continuing to do expansion projects for development. And then you have a local supply here that could be used for perhaps a grower or golf course or other large user, but it might be worth a look. There's time. It's 5 years out.
Get in the purple pipe business. I like it.
The
Yeah.
sidebar discussion that we had
Yeah.
is I looked at the North River Road project, which is 14 million. I don't remember if it was schoolhouse, but there was 10 million, there was a $10 million lift
Yep.
station,
That's this one.
you know, and another lift station. And my question was, if you look at potential development, and we're out 4 and 5 years.
Yes.
East of the thing, where's the crossover point of building a waste treatment plant? And just using the existing capacity rather than upgrading the
Yep.
capacity, which is very expensive. I mean, there's some cost trade-off. And then, you know, you got the brine distribution for the waste, for the water treatment plant. Well, send it down the.
There you go.
You know?
Yeah.
But as Jake pointed out, we've got to find somebody to use the water. You know, one of the projects that we've had off and on is injection of water into the San Luis Rey thing upstream and pulling it out downstream. Well, now you have a source to pump. Yeah, and so that was just the thought I'd thrown out. I don't know where the ROI is.
And I thought Tom Kennedy had been telling me that the district had been looking into a small scalping plant. I don't know if that was a
They
little
did,
white
there's a,
lie or-
there is a,
There was a
yeah, there is a study on it.
project.
So-
There was a study on it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, but I don't know, you know, again, if you start looking at costs you're gonna spend anyways, maybe
Yeah.
that might change the, you know, change the dynamics, yeah.
well,
So-
especially if it's developer driven and it's not
Yeah.
really money out of the district's pocket,
Right.
have them do the construction and develop that.
Particularly if we're talking about, I mean, as I recall, there are still about 500 equivalent dwelling units to be built in the existing project. And then there's the project that's 800 and something
The
equivalent dwelling units.
Campus
that-
Park or,
Well, no, it's actually outside the district, but we would get the
Oh,
service area for it.
The Cameron development.
Yeah, up on the other side of Montserrat Narrows.
Yeah.
Well, that's another, roughly 1,000 people flushing toilets, So it just, you've got to look at the projected development and anticipate, that it's not going to be like the HP development for Thoroughbred or whatever it was over here that took 20 years to get going.
yeah,
But
I like it.
Yeah.
I like
So,
it.
Has the district looked to see what capacity is still left at San Luis Rey? I mean, I have a feeling there's a lot, but it's the other interim system components to convey it there that are
Capacity and the,
all the pipelines and the lift stations, like we're talking about these projects here.
Oh, okay.
Probably other ones,
sure.
and with all of those developments coming online, it does put pressure on those existing systems.
Yeah, I mean, there was a capacity study done 2020, 2021. And that's actually where these projects came from. It showed, I mean, we know there's a deficiency in North River Road right now
Mhm.
under, I&I conditions, but it showed the other 2-3 projects that you've got these, as soon as more EDUs come online, you're gonna run out of capacity here too. So, so there's that, but, yeah, but I think we'll have to look now that we kind of have a, at least an estimate on these costs, kind of maybe dusting off the recycled water study to see what does
Yeah.
that mean for that? Cause I think it came down to, I mean, they didn't move forward with it.
Well, I think, as I recall, and this is, it was almost prior to detachment. It seemed to me that the cost per acre foot of water was 20% more than what we were paying to the
Yeah.
water authority. It was like,
I was given
What-
that document and it was that the board chose not to pursue
Yeah.
because it was not a benefit.
But if you offset,
but
again, you
can
offset 30,
it with things like
$30 million.
capital
Right.
improvement projects.
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Well,
it
and then-
had to be something to add to it.
I mean, I think too, there's probably development going in Oceanside that would be willing to pay for some of the capacity that Rainbow has that. would
Oh,
be freed
yeah.
Up as
Yeah.
part of that.
Right.
That could go to that project too.
That's a good point too.
Yeah.
This might be a good thing for the master plan. I'm talking to Flint. on
Yeah.
This one.
That's what I've been thinking this entire time.
Yeah.
As that's a good analysis for that as we're looking at the capacity of the wastewater system. Yeah.
Okay, any other questions on this one?
Yep.
Yeah, so here's kind of segueing what we've been talking about. This is North River Road sewer capacity expansion. So you can see in the first year, there's 50,000, well, not the first year, year 2, the first year of the project, 50,000 earmarked for a preliminary design report. Then you go into design and then you go into construction, and that's how that is being phased out.
So before we get there, we'll definitely make sure it's needed.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay,
This is an interesting one though, too. This is something.
North River Road.
Yeah.
Okay.
We were looking at this, because we had a study, the study had showed, potentially replacing this with a force main, all the way down.
Mhm.
what's happening on this line too is that big development's going in off of North River. And so a portion of our sewer is actually being upsized. It's being replaced with a 21-inch all the way back from Stallion all the way back to Wilshire. And so the developer's paying for that. They're going to move our metering facility to Stallion. So about a half a mile that's being upsized as part of that project. But as when I started looking at this thing, I mean, if you move back and you got the city of Oceanside service area for, for a pretty good stretch there. So if any other, additional development occurs out there, but then you have a large swath of, there are some nurseries and things like that, but you look at it and go, I mean, that could be houses at some point, right? It could definitely be houses at some point. And so that's kind of what, we were kind of going back and forth on, well, should this be a force main or a gravity? I'm like, I think you have to have a gravity main there just in case, right? I mean, you don't want to abandon it, have a force main, and then you've got a huge development that's ready to go in. So I guess my point is there's a potential for a lot of development along that line. Now, same thing, if you scalp the flow upstream, well, now you free up a bunch of capacity in there and you don't need to upsize and you could just, take on the flow. But so this will be an interesting one as things go on. But that's what worried me is like, well, you got really actually some potential growth adjacent to the pipeline that really wasn't accounted for in any of the capacity studies we ever did. And that it could happen. So yeah.
Will be interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, some cured in place pipe, CIPP. This is 2,000 linear feet of 8-inch VCP. So this is clay pipe that's out there right now. So we want to line this. This is near Paula Mesa. This kind of goes, you can see it's kind of going through parts of the golf course there. And this is just areas that, as Jake mentioned, a lot of I&I, a lot of inflow and infiltration coming in and need to help out the sewer system in those heavy rain events.
Chad?
Yes.
Stupid question. Educate me, please. When we take an existing pipe and we line it, let's just say it's an 8-inch pipe. Is it still an 8-inch pipe after we line the inside of it? What does it go down to? How much?
In this technology, this is non-measurable. You're still going to have nearly 8-inch pipe on this type. This is what's like a fire hose that's then ballooned up and it is to it. And there's very little annular space. So you are losing some, you're losing some, but you're not going down to a 6-inch or anything like that.
Usually get a little benefit on your
Flow rate because it's smooth.
friction losses too. Yeah. But yeah, you do lose some though. You lose a little bit.
But it's offset by the reduced friction.
Insignificant. That's the answer,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And you don't want to go lay new pipe when you can line it from manhole to manhole.
Gotcha. Thank you.
More areas identified. This is stuff that the wastewater team has been tracking for decades. Areas that they just have significant issues, especially increased flow during heavy rain events.
Chad, where is this? Lake Garden?
So Lake Garden, Robert, can you help me out on the exact?
Yeah, Lake Garden, it's right. If you see those two dirt looking areas, those are vineyards for the winery off of GERD.
Okay, thank you.
So that's going to be on the east side of GERD.
It's Carrie's problem. We don't care.
I go inspect that monthly over there.
Thank you.
Yeah, can
I
you please?
I just had no idea where this was. Thank you.
You can look down on it.
There you go, Greg. Keep
Hey,
it.
Chad,
Keep inspecting
it
it for
would
us.
be fantastic to get some sort of presentation at the engineering committee showing this technology because it's really very efficient.
How to do CIPP?
Yeah,
Okay.
when you guys do this, if somebody can take some film
Okay.
to show.
Well, we did it
Really
on North River Road.
Yes, yeah, we have
photos
and probably some video. We can put together a presentation.
Lining of that pipe. Yes, we did. So
Yeah,
we'll have some-
it's neat. Yeah.
So dust off that presentation and bring it back. Okay. And then this is valve replacement. This is pressure reducing station. This is a rolling fund. The areas haven't been identified. We know that they're out there. It's out in year 6 as we work through years 1 through 5. All right, let's now start giving these actual projects to do it. But we wanted to earmark it that we do know that that these areas are out there and we're aware of them. We just don't know exactly kind of that priority, what Jake said. We want to identify exactly where is this needed now. We're not there in year 6 right now, but it will be.
Are these still sewer or are they also water?
We are on sewer. Yeah, this is sewer.
I have a suggestion for this one. And
Sure.
we did this at Oceanside. We did video camera of the entire vitrified clay pipe inventory of
Okay.
the system, and it was ranked according to, you know, condition, and then the areas could be prioritized to
great
what
idea.
was really bad.
Yeah.
And then this could be deployed like right away, or, oh, it can wait 5 years, but that was very helpful to do. We'd never done it before, and had a wealth of information, so maybe as part of master planning,
Yeah.
that could also be done, yeah. Cause that can help identify some stuff you don't even know about.
Absolutely. That's how we found out about North River Road
River Road.
being so bad and becoming an emergency project. It's a great idea. Yeah, start with video inspection. Okay, this is a section between between lift station 1 and lift station 2. So this is on Old River Road. Currently, it is an existing gravity main. And in that 2020 study that we've been discussing, the engineer there had recommended upsizing it to 21-inch and converting it to a force main. And so this is about capacity. And so this is, these are things that were done, I wouldn't say in a vacuum, but they were done very zone or area specific. And when we do this master plan, it's taking all this data that we pieced together and putting it into one comprehensive document. Is this really necessary? Is it not? Is there a better way to do this?
And this one also fits in right into the.
Yeah.
Your other one.
discussion.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
So now we're up to 2024 million.
This project, very similar to what we did on North River Road. Again, you know, we want that confetti and popping corks when we complete a project, and we did North River Road, and the wastewater was like, yeah, but you didn't do anything on Gopher Canyon Road for us. And so we're having issues with some manholes, rings, and covers. We literally want to take a carbon copy of what we did on North River Road, where we line the pipe, we replace the manhole rings and covers, and we do it on Gopher Canyon and Little Gopher Canyon. Again, way out there, year 7. Am I going back in time, or do I have a duplicate side of Oak Cliff?
There's that.
It
I
was
think
good
it's
for Canyon then. Oak Cliff.
Yeah. Okay. So now moving back into tank maintenance and other projects years 2 through 10. So this is at the Moro Reservoir. This is an existing facility. This is down below the actual reservoir itself. This is where the chemicals are injected. There's a small building there, and this project is to move that facility and bring it to newer technology that helps the operators. This is anyone that's ever sat down with Robert and his group trying to get the dosing and chemical feed figured out at the Moro tank. I mean, you can spend hours upon hours upon hours. And so this is identifying that, actually building 2 new chemical tanks, and really helping out that reservoir there.
And chemical dosing systems then too.
Yes, all new everything. The existing facility and infrastructure would be decommissioned. It would be all new.
And it would be all on the same site?
It'll be on our property, but not in that lower area, correct? Art? We'd be moving it up higher towards the reservoir itself,
Okay.
but still on our property. Yeah, trying to do everything we can without easement acquisition.
Okay.
Do you want me to?
I'll lead off with.
I can absolutely take it.
I'll lead off with this one. So, our reservoirs, and so this is something, and this up for discussion, I guess. I mean, I guess it all is, but. But this is a unique one because we've been looking at our current tank maintenance, which we do under a third-party contract. We have for quite some time. Started it back in, I think it was 2003, with a company called.
They were
Help
like
me.
utility tank services then. They're
Right.
now close utility services group.
Right. It's changed hands and names a few times. It was Suez for a little while.
Viola.
Yeah. And now we have another. We've been taking a kind of a hard look at, we pay about, I think starting next year, there's a increase on tap, and we're gonna be paying about $800,000 a year for the tank maintenance. We have 13 steel tanks. And so over the last few months, we kind of deep dive into that contract, you know, how often are we doing interiors and exteriors? And, you know, the exteriors are they do those quite often, but the interiors, we not so frequent. The original contract had estimated, you know, there was no, you know, firm requirement, but you know, that they would be done every like 10 years, and most of them are being done every, you know, 16 to 18 years, which is a pretty long duration. So we started taking a look at, you know, I know what these things cost to do. And so we kind of, you know, long term, what do we have in the, you know, what do we have coming up in the near term, which isn't a lot. In the first few years, we don't have a lot of, the interiors are the big dollar. When you have to recoat the interior, that's where you spend the big dollars. And so we don't have a lot coming up in the next few years. And so we took a look at, you know, if we were to take over, you know, the management of our tank maintenance and these projects, what does that look like over the next 10, 12 years? And how does that compare to what we're paying, you know, a third party to do? There looks to be pretty significant savings, both in the short term. Sorry, I'm going to grab some water.
Getting all choked up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's near and dear to my heart.
this is a very emotional time.
I did do this at my previous employer. I oversaw the tank maintenance program, but we're seeing over the next few years. I mean, we're gonna you know, pay $800,000 a year. There's no interiors that are gonna be done over the next, say, 3. So, you know, $2.5 million that we're gonna spend over the next couple of years. You know, you do get some value out of it once they start doing the interiors again, because again, that's where your big cost is. But I guess, you know, over the long term, and this was just rough, you know, we're estimating costs and we're projecting them out over basically recoating all of our tanks over like one turn. But we, you know, I had a rough estimate where we were going to save maybe about $7 million over the course of that contract. Which makes sense. I mean, you're talking over 12, 13 years, right? The company's got to make money, right? They've got to make money. So it's a nice convenience thing. But we are, and this is something the board actually has to make this decision ultimately, because the contract requires 3 board member signatures to actually do something different, to not be a party to that contract anymore. So it's something that's coming up. I know it's a little strange. It's coming up in the next probably 4 or 5 months, but we went ahead and programmed in some of these tanks because there are, you know, there's several in that 10-year period that if we do want to move in that direction, that we would be taking on. We'd be taking on the construction of the recoatings. I think it's something we could take on. I think between our operations staff and engineering staff, and you know, once you have a good spec on these things, you know, construction is it does have to be monitored pretty closely. You know, you need a tank inspector that's qualified, and so, you know, I mean, you can do it in-house. You send your inspectors to, you know, they go get certified, and you know, once they've done a tank or two, it's not rocket science, but it is, you really do have to monitor it, because you want to make sure especially when you're doing the interiors, you get a good coating on the things, because you're paying a lot of money and you want it to last. But this is something we do want to consider over the next, we're kind of tipping our hand here, but
August, September-ish.
yeah, in August or so to potentially, yeah. Yeah. And so we're locked in through at least December. Again, we're going to continue to evaluate and make sure the financials all pencil out and that kind of thing. But I think it was worthwhile to at least start programming in these tank recoatings rather than the, you know, 800,000. I think every year they can advance about 5%. It's not a terrible contract, right? They can only go about 5% a year. So it hasn't been, you know, abusive, I wouldn't call it, but I think there's potential savings there. And it's something this is something a district can handle. It doesn't require a bunch of outside services, AutoCAD drawings and things like that. It's really just a coating spec and some good inspection is really what it takes. So
What's a ballpark crew size for that effort?
you mean for the actual tank recoating?
Yep.
Yeah, we would contract that out. We would put it out to bid and get a,
Okay.
a specialty contractor. I mean, it's a full crew on site, and it takes, depending on the size of the tank, it's usually, 6 to 10 weeks before, because they take it down.
Yeah, they,
take,
depending on the level you're taking it down to, and
yeah, blast all the coating off, recoat. It's a process. And again, especially on the inside, the exteriors aren't quite as, it's fairly cheap to keep the tanks looking nice. But it's really the interior where you're
What about insurance?
insurance.
Well, we had an interior tank, was it Gomez tank? It was recoated on the inside. There was a rust that got into one of the flow control valves and the tank ended up getting damaged. And
I think that's the Valentinos tank.
Paid for everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Usually, I mean, if you're going to do your own tank recoatings, the way it's typically handled, I mean, you have a standard warranty period where you would go, 12 months after it's done. You usually do like a dive inspection at 11 months just to make sure everything's holding up. If there's any corrections that have to be made, then the contractor has to make those. But then beyond that, it is the district then assumes if you make an operator error or you do something like that, then yeah, we're operating our tanks at that point.
That figures into the cost.
It figures into the cost, right? It figures into the cost. Yeah, and sometimes you get into these things and you've got to do some repairs, rafter repairs, and there's things that come up. Usually the contractors, this has been my experience, the contractors that do this kind of work, they're pretty good at it. If you've got to cut a piece of rafter out, weld a new piece on, and a lot of times that center vent gets really corroded, everything up there in the center. But so yeah, I mean, it'd be a new program that we'd be bringing in-house. I think there is, basically you're not paying profit.
$1 million can go to Clint's replacing pipe.
And I mean, it does help us in the short term too, not having to, we basically take that right out of the budget. Come December, I mean, you got to budget some, and there are, the other part of it is we contracted with them to do some additional work, stairs and the railing. So they still have one of those tanks left to do, which they're supposed to.
Rice.
Yeah, it's supposed to be done now.
It's always supposed to be done now.
Right. And then we're still paying on some of those. So there's still a balance left on that too. So there's some things we'll have to work out, but we'll bring it to E&O, and then we'll bring it to the board probably mid-year and do that. But for now, if we decide not to, fine, we can take these out of the CIP and just keep budgeting the, $1 million a year, or or we can go this route and it's already kind of programmed in.
Question about, so if I'm hearing you right, it sounds like we have a third, let's call it, I used to remember them as Suez, but whoever they are now.
Yep.
We have that company. And they have to mark things up to make profit.
Sure.
Mhm.
Are they using their own in-house forces to do the actual lining, or are they hiring a contractor?
No.
To do that?
It's them. They are doing it.
They're using their own in-house forces.
Correct.
So
We're taking
what
the
will be
profit
the
margin.
difference? What will be the difference between us contracting with Suez and us contracting with company XYZ to do this? How do we get the savings that you're discussing?
Well, I mean, you're just contracting out your own work. Basically, you're contracting out your own work. We're paying them every year, regardless of what work happens.
Yeah, I look at this as you're a rental and you're going to hire a property manager, and there's no issues for 3 years. Your property manager still made their profit. So we're seeing the first year we would actually have an expenditure is year 3. So this is their profitable time. Now on year 3, they are going to have an expenditure. They're going to go out and do it. And then it's a gap, and then it's year 5 again.
So we are basically hoping to get some savings by eliminating some profit markup, and we are also eliminating not project management, but program management. Is that basically what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
And that adds up to $7 million over.
Well, it was over a long period, a whole cycle of your
10
tanks.
years.
Yeah, 12, 13, 14 years. Yeah. Right.
Oh, okay.
So the savings is 7,000 a year.
No, it'd be more than that. It'd be more than that.
More than that, yeah.
Yeah.
It's 800K.
We'll bring it back we'll bring it back some harder numbers. We'll bring it back some harder numbers. But we're working on this and we didn't want to let the CIP go without getting these things in there. But when we bring you the contract thing, we're gonna tell you exactly, here's what it looks like, here's what it looks like without. And, yeah.
It'd be 50K a year over 14 years.
Some
To get 7-1.
500. Yeah.
So
So again, we'll validate all those numbers and bring them back and, you know,
Yeah,
The next 4 or 5 projects, it's the same story. over and over.
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they're just,
so I'm hearing you want me to spend 10 minutes on each one. Is that what I'm hearing, Clint?
it's a coding program.
Okay, here we got to a different one. We talked about this at the very beginning. This is out in year 8. So we have 3 different reservoirs that have their floating covers on them. Some of those are in better conditions than others, but we'd have this out. We did get a quote years ago, it's like 3 years old. So I just took that quote and just added a little bit to it. But it's pretty much $14 million. This includes the floating cover and the liner for these 3 reservoirs to do. And again, that's
all 3?
for all 3. Yes. Yeah.
What are you gonna say? I vaguely recall that Morrow was about 14 million by itself, wasn't it? The initial installation.
It might have been the initial installation, possibly because of the anchor points and stuff like that. I wasn't here when it was originally done, but the quote I received, Morrow, I think, was coming in around either like $6.5 or $9 million, and then the other 2 were much smaller.
Because they're smaller.
Yes,
I've got a couple questions.
sure,
Of course.
sure.
It looks like a big reservoir.
Morrow,
Right?
150 million gallons,
Okay, I haven't taken the tour yet. Are the other 2 equally
smaller.
big guys?
No, how much?
Is it-
What are your sizes of Rainbow Hills and North?
Much smaller.
Yeah, probably a quarter of the size of that. You could put the other 2 in there and
Yeah.
only fill half of it.
Is it feasible operationally to even do all 3 in 1 year?
No,
Okay, so then does that need to be spread out in other years, the cost?
so we just learned this probably actually after we met last week. We did a deep dive figuring out the timelines because that was the same question that we
Yeah.
came up with. Because you got to remember, Morrow Reservoir is going to be feeding the 3 southern tanks. So we actually reached out to Layfield and asked, well, how long is it going to take to do more? That was our biggest concern. The other ones we can deal with those being out of service. They told us this was a 7-month project.
To reline it?
Well, just to replace the cover, the liner stays. That's just to replace the cover.
This cost
For
does
Morrow.
include liners also,
Morrow.
though.
For Morrow.
Yes,
For Morrow. So that's where we were like, okay,
it can be offline for 7 months.
can they mobilize enough people to do all 3 at the same time?
Probably not.
Probably not. Could we operationally handle all 3 at the same time?
Probably not.
Yes, in the sense that the other 2 are feeding the north up there. As long as there's not an aqueduct shutdown from Met or the water authority that we've got to coordinate with. And providing we get that temporary pump skid that's up at Turner right now and get that relocated up to Rainbow Hills. So there's a lot of coordination to go into doing this.
You want to do it in the winter months like we've had this year so that there's no draw on the water.
And that's when they do their shutdowns.
And that's when everybody
Yeah.
does their shutdown. So, yeah, but I think the, operations bringing this to Chad and engineering and Jake is like, hey, this is a concern. We need to start thinking about this for the future. And
So we're really looking at the dollar amount, total dollar amount, not exactly how it would be spent.
correct. Because the biggest thing is the aqueduct shutdowns and how can we shorten up that 7 months of having Morrow out of service, right?
Yeah.
I
So
just, excuse me, I just
Go
look at the 14 million and just go, oh, that's a debt issuance right there. So does it make sense to spread it out maybe so that it could be cash funded possibly? Or can we have a conversation about that? That's just what sticks out to me. And it's debt.
Yeah, the year 8, the idea is that's when because that's when we do the contract, whether it's phased out over a couple of years or not. That's when we're committing the funds. It's almost entirely assumed that'll be a debt issuance to try and fund. It's already debt for the first installment, and that's about when that debt rolls off,
Yeah.
is when we'd be issuing another series.
So,
Yeah.
that cost is for all three covers?
Yes.
And are they all on about the same service life? Were they all installed at the same time?
They were installed over the course of 2 calendar years, so they were all sequential, one after the other.
And how far into their service life are they?
It was 2010 and 11, I believe. I think
Okay.
it started in 2010.
Yeah. We want to spread this out.
Well, to follow up on Meg, have we looked at permanent covers? Because their useful life is much longer. And the maintenance is probably easier. And I realize it's a bit of a construction project because you'd have to put some beams in the middle, up vertical beams, vertical members and stuff, but have we even looked at the possibility of permanent covers for these reservoirs?
No, it hasn't even been considered, and I don't know. I know there's new technology that they're using for smaller tanks, like 5 million gallon tanks, where instead of having like a domed concrete roof, it's a, I don't know if you had any up north up there, but I want to say it's like a geogrid. It's like aluminum basically.
Geodetic dome over it.
Something like that, yeah. I don't know. It could be possible for the two smaller ones. I don't know if that would ever pencil out for Morrow. Morrow's
Be a
an
huge-
awful lot of
Huge
surface
fans.
area.
Yeah.
Fans.
This is.
That's why I was thinking you might have to have vertical.
Yeah, no, it's
Risers
gonna require
inside.
supports on more, for sure.
The smaller ones, you might be able to do one single that just sits, kind of like like what covers up digest. What I'm thinking, something like that.
Mm.
Just a thought.
Yeah.
Maybe we should put 50,000 in year 7 to do a little PDR before we actually do the cover replacement.
Yeah.
We can do that. And we could take the 14 and spread it years 8 and 9 as well, since we know we're not going to spend it in a single fiscal year, if that helps. Okay. Okay. And then the next two are continuations of tank it. So again, this goes back to the very beginning. How were these ranked? They were ranked on the years that they're going to hit in order of the slides.
Okay.
We've made it.
4:07, however accurate that clock is, and obviously staff is available for any questions.
Fantastic. Thank you for hearing what we really wanted to have. And still continue the conversation.
We have 2 more workshops.
Yeah.
What,
I lost
Look at
track of that,
Patty's
Pete.
face.
No, I'm just so impressed
Thank you.
with the amount of work that
Yeah,
you guys
this is-
have
yeah.
all done.
Well,
Yeah, this.
I
is
am
very
just-
impressive.
So
Like overwhelmed.
you don't see them, but the entire engineering department was asked, please do not multitask. I hope to not have to call on you, but I might. So they are all watching and paying attention. They are in making these changes to these slides of typos and anything else as we speak. Pete just asked, how long did this take? The entire engineering department and meetings alone and just workshops, we lost count. The workshops that Jake set up with Rick, Robert, myself, and then the meetings that I'd have with the different departments. I mean, this truly was all hands on deck to get this done.
Oh, yeah. Very impressive.
Amazing.
Nice job.
Nice job.
2 questions. Yeah,
Sure.
First of all, great job.
Thanks.
Fabulous chunk of work. 2 questions. First, would it be safe to say that all of these projects have been addressed with our preliminary EIR? And do we have any environmental issues that are posed by this menu of projects? And second, this is the hard one. What projects have we not seen in this? What projects have high main break or leak or failure characteristics that are not in this batch?
I could talk about that.
Yeah.
So the pipeline projects that you saw in there were a result of us taking the HDR study that was done 6 years ago. There was a gang of projects on there and we went through, operations staff went through and were like, we haven't had a break on there in 6 years. Take that off the list. That's junk. And we went through and deleted a bunch of that we thought was things that we thought were non-essential. Then we went back and reprioritized, and actually on our GIS software, we can see we have blue pin drops on the software where there's main breaks. It's a layer that we can turn on. So like when you see how many main breaks we had, we're counting the pin drops on that street. So we prioritize what we thought is hot and heavy right now.
Do we have,
There will be more.
There, yeah,
Yeah.
There will be more.
without, yeah, this doesn't,
guessing we have some really old pipe out there.
Retchie roll.
Have had a problem.
Yes.
Yet.
Yes.
But it's just gestating, getting ready to have problems.
Correct.
And we know what the age of those lines are, right?
They're correct. And so just like 5 or 6 years ago, when the HDR study was done, they came up with a group of water lines that need to be fixed. And we did some remedial action, like Sarah Ann, put a pressure station, drop the pressure. 5 years from now, moving forward, there's going to be a whole nother subset of lines that need to be fixed that are become problem childs.
To the first,
To the EIR.
to the, yeah, the PEER, programmatic environmental impact report. Most of everything we just went through is covered.
Most of our projects were in the green zone to begin with.
Correct, correct. So
Okay.
there are some that will come up. So every time there is a new project or a project, we still go back to that peer. We do an evaluation. There might be some activity that needs to be done, or it was not covered. And so we would do an amendment to the peer to get it covered. But most of everything we just went through is already in there.
And we can use the original consultant that did the pier in order to do the amendments.
Correct. We did that for the pump station project. We did that first amendment.
That's legal and we got no issues with having to rebid or anything like that.
Correct, correct.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Turn.
Is that it?
QED.
That's it for that item.
What item?
I love it.
So we're through presentation of draft capital improvement plan, information items, receive and file.
Yeah, we included, because we didn't do the committee meetings this month, we put all the information reports in there just so you'd have them. You'll see a lot of them again, I think next week. A couple updates, but those will be on the board, in the board packet again. But we want to make sure the committees and everybody got those reports, so that was it.
Okay. I'll remind everybody that the next meeting, joint meeting is April 9th at 1 PM. And Rick gets to take the floor. And with that, we're adjourned.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
But
you.
the next meeting is next.
Great job.
That's
You guys
Rick's
are
report.
Great.
Thank you.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Got it.
Won't stop me. I think I hit the button.
Wow.
I'm pretty sure I hit the button.